Our first speaker this morning is Civic, the president of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, followed by Kahoolawe Burgess, Keone Agard, and Russell Stewart. And I'm going to ask that each of them at the beginning just introduce themselves and offer a little bit so that we can understand the importance of the folks that are presenting to us. Here are some ground rules that I hope we can operate by. Let's allow our different speakers to offer their full presentations. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of our afternoon, after we've had a set of speakers up until lunch. After lunch, we're going to continue having more speakers. They're going to be Henry Noah, Michelle Kapuhane, John Osorio, Walter Reedy, and Pampi Kanahen. After that, we're going to have the panel come up to the table and we'll have Q&A. So there'll be time for you to ask questions. If you can please hold your questions to that time, that would be much, much appreciated. Since we got into the discussion kind of spontaneously this morning, we're going to get to do some housekeeping. So let me go through some just basic housekeeping. There's the lua down this way, and all the way in, if you come down, there's sort of a tea hall. And so there's kane on this side, wahine on this side of the tea hall, or kane wahine down the hall, past the pillars this way, if you guys want to go. And if anybody does go, well, when you go, the code you're going to need, you punch it in. For wahine, it's 614. 614. Oh, hello. Thank you. And then comment. 719. Yes. Okay, 719. You guys already, he's my old men are always boss. Okay, so it's been decades and decades and decades that our people have been working on trying to figure out, problem solve. Same kind of stuff we've been problem solving this morning, and all kinds of stuff to problem solving. And the people that are going to be speaking have invested so much of their lives in coming up with these ideas, right? And working with their groups, lots of wonderful, wonderful mana'o from many of our lahui. So let's hear from them and offer them our greatest respect in hearing what they have to say. Mahalo. Just a quick note, we are live streaming, so
we might be doing that shortly. Aloha, my kako. My name is Suli Stroud. I stand before you in great humility. Standing with me is my beloved mother, who passed away, and I know her spirit is with me today. Also standing with her is my dear kupuna, who I love and know that these kindred spirits inspire and guide my actions, and I hope my deeds this day. Kamana'o, we hope that you are resting. If you're watching this live feed, don't get too excited. We need your strength and energy, and we pray for you as well. We have before us a clarion call, and that is to Hawaiians to join together. And I think that's why we're all here, and that's why we feel that this time is an important time for us to be together. So I stand before you again representing the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. And by the show of hands, how many here are Civic Club members? Okay, very good. I'm glad to see they're on both sides of the room. And that, to me, is an important thing to, let's see, advancing this slide here.
It's just a little slow reaction.
Okay, there we go. So it's important for me to say up front and for us to have an understanding that we are a membership organization. Today we comprise 68 civic clubs. Membership in the civic clubs total a little over 5,000 members. Civic clubs are autonomous, and what that means is that they have their own constitution and bylaws, and they have patterns of governance that they have in each of the clubs. There is an expectation, however, that they do comply with the constitution and bylaws of our councils as well as the association. We hope that the Civic Club is a voice for issues of the Hawaiian people. Now, with that said, it's a majority voice. And again, there's the extremes of our opinions, but when we come together, we try to come up with a majority voice. So a lot of what I'll be sharing with you today is the majority voice. Just briefly, the Civic Club movement began in 1918. Our founder, Prince Kuhio. He felt as he was working in Washington that there was a need for there to be work at home, for the community to get involved. As he was doing the work in DC, again, there was a need for the community here to be engaged in the work of the Hawaiians. It was his hope in these next two statements that the purpose of the civic clubs was to elevate and promote social, economic, civic, and intellectual status of Hawaiians. To also promote the principles of good government, outstanding citizenship, and civic pride in the inherent progress of Hawaii and her people. Again, that was the founding vision that Prince Kuhio had for the civic clubs. Now, after 1918, many clubs formed very quickly. Again, some of those clubs are listed there. As clubs began to grow, there was a need for consolidating and coordinating club activities, as well as chartering new clubs as they had a desire to do so. So in 1959, the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs forms. And again, the purpose of the association is to, again, unite and bring the clubs together and to, again, take charge of the chartering process. So today, if we look at today, there are 68 civic clubs throughout Hawaii and also on the continent. Again, here at the breakout shows on Hawaii. In the council, there's 11 civic clubs. On Maui, there's 5. Oahu, there's 27. Kauai Council, there's 4. And if you note on the mainland council, there's 21 civic clubs. If you also note the states in which the civic clubs reside, wherever there is high population of Hawaiians in those communities, we have civic clubs. So if you look at, again, all the way from Alaska to Washington, D.C., and states in between. Our civic club, as far as how we manage our business, we do rely on Robert's Rules of Order to transact business. Members are expected to have the basic knowledge of Robert Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure. Members are expected to take leadership roles within their clubs or councils and even the association. Again, speaking of leadership, we have elected positions, the president, the vice presidents, the treasurers. These positions are elected every 2 years, and there are term limits in place. There is also a board of directors as far as governance. We have 19 members on the board. And as you can see there, all of the island, all of the councils are represented by board members. We have, again, under leadership, first vice presidents with Kuleana over the following committees. So as we organize our structure in the association, we rely on committees and committee chairs and committee members to do the work of, again, the association. Again, the committees listed there are under the first vice president. The second vice president, again, noting their committee chairs and their responsibilities. Note here some of the chairs. Economic development is a big chair that's starting to play a large role in what we're talking about here today as far as governance. Native Rights Committee, some of our committee chairs are actually in the room today. Again, as far as process, resolutions becomes the voice of the association. Resolutions come out of the clubs, they come out of the councils, they come from committee chairs, and these resolutions are sent 60 days prior to our national convention. The resolutions are sent to the membership, and the purpose of that is for our entire membership of 5,000 to look at the resolutions and see what's going to be discussed. Now, at convention, the resolutions are assigned to committees where these resolutions are discussed, possibly amended, and then acted upon under committee rules. The committee chair prepares a report. This report goes to the House of Delegates at our convention. The entire House of Delegates discuss and debate the issues that are before them. And as far as representation, there is one delegate per 10 members that represents, again, their membership, their club. The reason why I'm sharing all of this with you, this background, is our voice as the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, again, comes from this work of the resolutions. Many, but not all resolutions will go to the state legislature. The governor, the congressional delegations, the mayors, federal, state, county agencies will receive our resolutions. Many will act upon those resolutions. Many will adopt those resolutions as if their own as they run through, for example, the state legislature. The resolutions that are passed, they act as a policy statement and guides for testimonies on legislative matters. So again, our vision as the Association of Hawaiian Civic Club is to be a recognized voice for the Native Hawaiian people. I will say as a side note that our last convention, we had a delegation that numbered around 250 attendees at our national convention, was a little under 500. Now, the question then is, how does our approach help to rebuild the Hawaiian nation? The foundation of the Civic Club movement is the Civic Club itself, where Civic Clubs in their communities, where they elevate, promote social, economic, civic, and intellectual status of Hawaiians, we feel the community is better because of that. So the strength of the association is the Civic Club in the community doing the work that our founder envisioned. Also, as Civic Clubs promote principles of good government, outstanding citizenship, and civic pride, we feel again the inherent progress of Hawaii and all of her people is perpetuated. So this is our approach to nation building, is coming together in a delegation and coming together with resolutions, with items that are important to those communities. So the following then are steps that should or could be taken to rebuild our Hawaiian nation. And what I'm going to share with you now are resolutions that came out of our convention last year and some of the years before. And as you look at the titles of the resolution, I think you'll quickly see that there's a broad spectrum of initiatives and positions that we've taken. Again, the first resolution speaking to having the Department of Education understand, again, Hawaiian history. Again, that came out as a resolution. Lynette Cruz and her Civic Club, Kale Miley Ali'i Hawaiian Civic Club. This was a resolution that their club came up with that was debated and passed at our convention. Now, the establishment of foreign trade zones. This is a resolution that does allow trade zones to be established that can bestow custom duties, lowering the duties. Because of because of high security, there's also lower security insurance rates. Again, there's a lot in these resolutions. It's a lot to cover. For those that are interested, if you go to our website, you can pull up any of these resolutions and look at the content of the resolution and see what it is involving. The next resolution speaks to closely held corporations that are separate and distinct from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Again, the idea of these corporations, shareholders are Hawaiians, there's no outside investors, it's an elected process of officers and directors, dividends are paid. Again, there are some models of successful corporations. There's also many corporations that have failed. But the idea of the corporation and proper management certainly is something we should look at. We do and have many resolutions speaking to nationhood and to nationhood dialogues, and we are in the process of doing that. The association stands prepared to be a part of this process and to engage our communities likewise. We had Civic Club members that went to Alta, Norway, and it was a conference of Indigenous peoples. And while they were there was a document that came out called the Alta Outcome Document. This is a document that we're prepared to share with everyone. And again, that document discusses Indigenous rights, the lands, the ocean, the waters. The Civic Clubs have a resolution that speaks to a constitutional convention. We feel that we have the ability, because we've been doing it since 1959, to organize, plan, and manage a constitutional convention. We would like to offer our services in doing so. We'd like to collaborate with others in doing that as well. I'm stuck. I'm not sure if my time's up. Okay, there we go. Again, other resolutions, I believe my time is short. Again, this will be available for those that are interested. We had a discussion on the Hawaiian National Sustainability Plan. We had a discussion in the resolution that talks about community input and participation, which again is what we're here for. I wanted to end by just speaking about, there are resolutions that again do not get accepted or adopted by the House of Delegates. This is one resolution that called for an executive order from President Obama. Again, it was discussed, it was vetted in community or in committee, but again did not make it through our process and accepted as a resolution. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that the minority in this case had a valid position that they wanted to bring to the convention. It was brought, it was discussed. But again, the majority in this case does rule. There was also a resolution that talked about facilitating qualified Native Hawaiians in the formation of their government. This resolution actually mirrors the discussion we had earlier today. But again, that discussion was had. The last resolution I want to speak to talks about a registry of descendants of the Hawaii Kingdom nationals, again, who signed the Kuwait petition in 1997. This again was a suggestion that was brought to the House of Delegates as a way to involve all Hawaiians in another process as far as identifying their potential participation in signing up as the registry of descendants. So in conclusion, we feel the association has the capacity to plan and organize a constitutional convention. We look forward to that opportunity to participate with all of you in that. The association is developing a national statement of principles. We'd be happy to share that with you as well. As far as outreach, these are resolutions that talks about outreach, community education, informing the community as far as what process we're involved with now. As far as sustainability, we do have some specific resolutions that talk about sustainability and what it takes to be a viable nation that is dependent on ourselves and on others. But we do have some plans in place that we would, again, love to share with you. Our founder, Prince Kahoolawe, on his deathbed, this was his wish. I hope it is all of our wishes for Hawaiians to join together in unity and try to agree so that the answer to a large problem, the life of the race, can be found. And with that, mahalo, appreciate your time.
Hallelujah, Civic. Kahoolawe.
Ano ay may Kahoolawe no tuman. I am Kahoolawe. Hey, Hawaii. There's three things I hope to do in the limited time that I have. Number one is to express stages of decolonization, which may be new to some of you. Second is to talk about an issue that we have not addressed, and that is dealing with deep culture. The way we operate with one another, the way we operate with our environment, the way we operate with other nations. And the third is how to bring about the unity that Brother had just talked about as Kahoolawe expressed that concern. And that will be moving from the or choice to the and choice in terms of integration or independence. So let me begin first, and I will be introducing myself as we go through my full presentation. At present, I am the chairperson of the Native Hawaiian Convention. You see, the idea of decolonizing an area, sometimes we think it's very simple. Take the colonial power, get them out of territory, and allow us to govern. Therefore, we are decolonized. But what happens is that as we study what has happened in other countries, they leave the institutions in place. They leave the basic governing principles in place. You look at many of the nations that have decolonized, you look at the constitutional structure. The constitutional structure merely mirror images the constitutions of the prior colonizers. Is that really what decolonization is? What happens to the hopes and dreams of the people themselves? Has it been given an opportunity to explore what is your hopes? Where do you want to be 25 years from now, 30, 50 years from now? Without that kind of opportunity to really decolonize, not only the territory, but to decolonize ourselves and our institutions and the principles by which we work by, you haven't really decolonized. All you have done, if at all, is substitute different leaders for the existing structure that you now have. So in our case, if that is what happens, all you do is have Native Hawaiians ruling the society rather than the Haoles, the Japanese, and the rest. But if the institutions remain the same, if the dreams of Hawaii remain the same, haven't we really decolonized? In other words, what one guy told me, hey, you might win the rat race, but you all end up being rats. So I suggest that decolonization is a little bit more intricate than that, and what I want to do is lay out 5 stages of decolonization. The first stage is what some of us started or went through in about the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, and we're still going through it. And that is a stage of recovery and rediscovery. In 72, it struck me while I was in the United States Air Force, volunteered to go fight for the American nation because the Vietnam War was going on, and then I pick up a book written by Lili Okalani. And she speaks to me over this period of time through literacy, telling me about the details of the illegality of the overthrow. And then I move more and more into what exactly had happened. I get into the Hawaiian culture and I begin my process of recovery and rediscovery. which many of us have not even entered into. As a result of that, I enter into a second phase, and that is a mourning phase, the anger phase. Sometimes we call it a piss-off stage. While in the military, I see myself as a member of that military organization that participated in the overthrow of our very government. I started plotting to kill Americans. I started plotting to blow up buildings. I was so angry that I wanted to just get rid of these folks. Many of us have seen others in this period of mourning, in this period of anger. Sometimes just listen to the voices of others. We can recognize that this is a stage that they are in as they express their passion. It's not wrong. It's just part of the maturation stages as we move towards decolonization. We've got to go through that. Any people who have been so injured as we have been will go through this mourning phase. The problem there is that sometimes we get locked into the mourning. We get locked into the awfulizing. Then we build a career on the fact that, oh, poor us. We stuck over here, they took this, they took that, and the rest. And that is where the conversation begins and ends. Okay? Sometimes we call it, we get stuck in the awfulizing. And we build our careers from that. And what happens is the media loves to play that game. Oh, let me put the microphone in front of you so that you can express why the Howlers should go home, why the Japanese should go home, and all the problems of Hawaii, and we will call you a Hawaiian leader. And so everybody else who no more the microphone in front of them says, oh yeah, that's our Hawaiian leader. We have seen many of those things going on in our community, in our society. And yet other people are asking, can we build our nation? Can we build our future? Merely on the historical injustices that have occurred? Or is Hawaii something more than that? We recognize the historical injustice. That gives us a springboard to push us into Hawaii's future. But Hawaii is far more than just historical injustices. We have to start dreaming about other things. What can our nation be? How do we formulate the nation? How do we protect one another? And so, out of that mourning phase, you come into the third stage, the dreaming. And then you begin to ask these questions. How can we survive as an independent nation? Who will protect us if the Americans pull out? Economically, can we survive? Socially, what new rules do we follow? So as you get into this discussion, this dreaming, then you have all these different ideas. Some people say we need to retain the protection of the United States that protects the Office of Hawaiian Affairs' existence. Bishop Estate, leave them alone. All of the elite trusts, leave them alone. What about Hawaiian Homes program? Leave them alone. We want that protected. And yet, we still have this yearning for our independent nation. How do we bring the two together? Or can it be brought together? And so you have all these questions being asked, and as you engage in this dreaming process, you begin to answer these things. There are new rules that can be followed, even national security. There are rules about foreign trade. Why is it that we are not collecting on the tourists coming into Hawaii, and yet the Americans can charge for all the visas that they have? Why should we be controlled by American laws with regards to foreign relations? So the fact is that we were an independent nation and we survived pretty well. Why are we so limited in our dreaming? So this gives us a time to dream with one another, to project what is Hawaii, where do we go? What is the role of the indigenous people within a Hawaiian nation, recognizing that it wasn't only the race that were Hawaiians. Hawaiian is a term of nationality, not a term of race. And when they switch that definition, when they ask you, hey, what's your nationality? Oh, I'm Chinese, Hawaiian, Howland, Portuguese, etc., we're wrong. We answer as if we don't have a nation. That is part of the dreaming. Okay? Even our language, we begin to colonize ourselves. We call that place a mainland rather than America. So this is the process in which we talk with one another. We open it wide enough so everybody can come in and join in that dreaming. And then we get frustrated Because there's others who say, I'm a king, or I sit on the throne, or I'm whatever it is. And then they're going all over the place claiming that they represent the nation, and yet we are saying, but we never got invited to the party that elected you. Or we're not members of your family. Or where do you get this from? This isn't a collective effort. This seems to be separate effort, but very important separate efforts. Because without that, you have 200 or more thousand Hawaiians with all independent voices. By the creation of this gathering together, at least now we can come together and begin to conduct this conversation. Then over a period of time, and let's go back to about 1993. You remember that event? Many of you participated at Iolani Palace. 100th anniversary of the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian nation. I did the radio broadcast with Hawaii Public Radio. Everything is as it was, and you are there to review the events that occurred. Then the state legislature passes its first confession. They call it the apology resolution, in which they say, yeah, it's true, we were invaded illegally, and now the government that exists here, we're going to start questioning that. Then at the end of the year, December 1993, Cleveland signs another confession. They call it the apology resolution. Talking about essentially the same thing. Clinton, not Cleveland, Clinton. Please, no interruption from the Okay. Now, cool down. So what happens is this. The state legislature says, hey, this Hawaiian sovereignty issue, we got to do something about it. So they created an entity called the Sovereignty Advisory Commission. 9 people appointed to the commission. I was appointed to the commission. So we sit down, we talk about it. I had representative Hawaiian Homes organization. So we get all different people. Okay. So we prepared our report. We sent it to the legislature. The chairman of the Senate Hawaiian Affairs Committee refused to accept it. He says, I cannot accept the report. You essentially say that we illegal, that there was an illegal overthrow, and as a result of that, this is where we are now. I refuse to accept it. So we said, well, you asked us, this is our conclusion. So what they did, they formed a new organization called the Hawaiian Sovereignty Advisory Commission. 21 people this time. 5 selected by the legislature, the rest appointed by John Waihee, governor. Nominated from Hawaiian organizations. Okay, I got selected and I sat on the Hawaiian Sovereignty Advisory Commission. So they asked us, what can we do? How can we pull the Hawaiians together? Our response was, we cannot tell you. We're appointed by you folks. If we are to answer that question, we got to go out into the communities and ask the communities, where do we go? So they say, go ahead. Do exactly that. We went to every large Native Hawaiian community. Unfortunately, we didn't go to Niihau. We went all over America, and we started talking about where do we go. What you saw this morning was what we went through in every community. We were accused. We had one guy who actually Make, who was a member of our organization. No? And we were told, we're traitors. Why? Well, because you folks funded by the government. Okay, you get money to fund us instead? No. The point that we were trying to drive is, it's not the source of funds. It's the integrity of the movement and whether or not the people are true to the purpose. And so what we did, we listened to all the voices. And I was, in times, on the losing side. They said, hey, we cannot wait any longer. Everybody claiming to be kings and queens. We need to start moving and get our own delegates. We need to elect our own delegates. Let them all meet in a convention and beat it out. And then present to us what their proposal is. Not that they're going to decide on the formation, but then you have to come back to us and we will see if we ratify or we don't ratify your agreement. My point was too early. Our Hawaiian population don't really understand the issue. 1977, I graduated from law school in 76. I represented this defendant, Wilfred Kahoolawe, in a double murder, double kidnap case. At that time, I raised the issue when they asked, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty? I said, we refuse to dignify this cause. We are not Americans, we are Hawaiians. Who are you foreigners to come into our government, into our nation, and charge our Hawaiian citizens by your laws? It's not a question of his guilt or not guilt. The real question is who has jurisdiction to stand over that. At that time, it was Judge, what was his name? Lanham. I read the Cleveland's address to Congress, point for point, and he says, Mr. Burgess, this is the most fantastic story I have ever heard. And yet, I was a representative in the legislature. I was in the territorial legislature. I'm now a circuit court judge. I'm married to a Hawaiian woman. I have children who are part Hawaiian. I never heard this story. You move from that time to about 1995, 1996, when we were going out to the public. I felt that the whole Hawaiian public was not ready for it. The response was, well, how long more are we going to wait? Our people are already dying. Every time we look in the newspaper, they mock. We cannot wait any longer. And I think they were right in the end. So we put the vote to the people. Shall the Hawaiians elect their own delegates to meet in a convention, to propose a Native Hawaiian convention? 23,000 had voted, 73% said yes. The rest said no. So we went to the next step. We said, okay, we're going to elect delegates. And we created an election process. In this process, we said, as long as you po'e Hawaii and you claim to be, you can vote. You can be a citizen of the United States, you can be a citizen of Switzerland, of wherever it is. We're not going to judge you by citizenship. Also, we're not going to take away your right to vote because some judge said that from now on you have no more civil rights. We went into the jails and we registered people in the jails. It was a wide open process. We did have one limitation, 18 years old. We had people who voted from Switzerland. We got ballots from the African nation, I forget, Zimbabwe I think it was. We got from Asia. This was an open election. We elected 89 delegates. We've been meeting. We divide into different committees. We go out into the public. We always welcome people who want to come and share their opinions. I was the chairperson of an international relations committee. We had a governance committee. We had a description of the territory. We had a description of who are the citizens of this nation. We came out. I see my time is running out. We came out with two proposals. One, we will submit for an integrationist model, very similar to the Akaka bill. Second proposal, we submit for an independent nation. And in that independent nation, we have a model in which we secure the place of the po'e Hawaii, but we also recognize that it is more than just a po'e Hawaii who have been citizens and have a right to be citizens, so we also have a general community. We have been ready to propose, to put out this process. And what happens? The money rug gets pulled out from under us. OHA then started moving out towards the Akaka bill. And that seems to be their only direction. The state legislature, the chairman of the Senate Hawaiian Affairs Committee, refused to fund us anymore. We cannot conclude our process. My suggestion is that we do go ahead and conclude that process. If we make a promise, it's what we call hua'olelo. If people say something, stick to the promise. We have to conclude that process. Put it out to the people. If you want another convention, you want to review it, it's up to you. If we vote for integration, then we need to come back and talk about how we're going to integrate within the United States. If we move for independence, we need another election. Have the people come in and talk about those two. Oftentimes, we get stuck into this mentality. Either integration or independence. Part of the United States or a sovereign independent nation. This conjunction, two letters, or, has divided our Hawaiian community And we seem to be continually arguing about either this way or that way. What you're not a loyal Hawaiian citizen, what you want to be an American citizen, well, what you're going to do with Hawaiian homes. You mean that we're going to be an independent nation, we wipe all of that out, etc., etc., etc. That's a stupid conjunction. And our leadership, myself included, have not been advocating efficiently and effectively enough to recognize that there's another conjunction. And that conjunction is and. We want to protect all of these things that we now have. And we want our independence. Yes. What makes it so that I have to split myself? We got to split our families. We got to split our Hawaiian people into this side or that side. That's stupid. We need to change our mentality to recognize that it's an inclusiveness. If we're going to pull our people together, let us welcome everyone into the house. We can go on to support integration at this point, but we're certainly not giving up our independence, and we need to have that stated very clearly. And not only stated, but start working to the independence while we are protecting all of the stuff that we now have. And in this way, we can pull our Hawaiian people together. I'm sorry, my time is up. I have not been able to talk about this other concept of deep culture, the difference between domination, individualism, and exclusion, which is somehow what we have been working on for too long, and we lose sight of the other side. Instead of domination, it's olu-olu. Instead of individualism, it's lokai. Instead of exclusion, it's aloha. Olu-olu, lokai, and aloha, ola. We need to build our society based on new deep cultures, new principles of ola rather than dai. I'm sorry again, for exceeding my time.
Hallelujah. Our next speaker is Kioni Ega.
Yes, aloha everyone. Aloha. Good morning. Last night, after 9 o'clock, I received something in an email talking about the subject that we would be discussing today, and I'm about to discuss now. When I read the email last night, after 9 o'clock, I did not understand the question. After having talked to the OHA staff, I now understand what they were asking us to address today. If we're going to build a nation again, what makes us different from other countries? So I thought about that. Why would we spend the kind of time we've spent in the last several decades to build a nation? What separates us? Why is it so important to us? And what came to my mind last night was our cultural values. We cannot enter this process of building a nation without going back and implementing and practicing and preaching the very cultural values that make us who we are. I can talk about politics and stuff like that. I'm good at that. What we have missed is being true to our cultural values as a part of instituting and building this nation. The nation is going to be no different from other nations unless we make it happen in a cultural way to practice those things that are dear to us. One of the things that we talked about in the past was we must establish a code of conduct when we meet each other and talk about these important issues of building a nation. We must demand mutual respect amongst each other, despite the fact that we have differences in the approaches. Many of us in this room have been in countless meetings, and we, in order to progress successfully, we must understand that even though my brother and my sister have a different opinion than me, we should not diss them. We should understand their position, but retain our right to disagree. So I can disagree with you, you can disagree with me, but we need to maintain respect because everyone has a right to their own opinion. And when we conduct ourselves, that code of conduct should require mutual respect. Without that, we won't succeed. So what I'm saying to you folks is that as we continue our progress, as we move forward, as we build our nation, we must take this into account. Now, by establishing a clear list of basic fundamental values to guide our building process, it will only enhance our chances of success. We must insist we practice what we preach. We remind each other as we're going along. Talk is cheap. Actions and deeds is what counts. So if we're going to elevate the discussion, if we're going to be a success, if we're going to build this nation once again, we need to take that into account. The spirit of aloha is with us. Let's remind ourselves of that. Now, as we get into the more political nature, perhaps the more practical nature of looking at what type or what form of government will provide the best option for our lahui. We've talked about the options many times. Let me suggest, should we decide to go for independence, we need to look at what blessings we have been given through our aina. It's our kuleana to use and care for those blessings with Kanaka Maoli values. Independence, economic prosperity. How do we use the blessings of this aina? What hinders economic prosperity in our islands? What would generate a thriving economy for all the peoples of our islands? How do we attract business to Hawaii that's compatible with our values? As an independent nation, can we get better economic incentives for business to thrive and grow? How do we create jobs? How do we create perpetual income for our nation? How do we share our nation's income with other people? There has been a misdirection in our lives. There have been other people that have been controlling the economics. We need to be a part of that. How do we be a part of that? Having an independent nation will provide the opportunity for us to control our own destiny. Independence as the financial hub of the Pacific. Hawaii has two of the top 5 banks in the United States of America. Could these banks be the foundation of the Hawaii Swiss banking system? With what's happening in the American banking system and all the many negative impacts, would be able to attract other people, utilize Hawaii as a safe haven for foreign countries to do business here in the banking industry? Think about that. We're in the middle Pacific. East comes to west comes to east. We're in the middle. We have an opportunity to establish our own banking system here in Hawaii as an independent nation. The economic diversity that can be achieved through our own banking system is limitless. And we need to pay attention to that, because nobody wants to go to a nation that cannot support itself economically. We need to have and we need to concentrate on some of the issues that have been already presented by Bumpy and others about a bank, a Native Hawaiian bank, where all of us are shareholders. Panama. Panama is an offshore banking haven for the top businesses in the world. I can hear myself now. U.S. businesses like Walmart, they use the country of Panama as a pass-through to import goods it sells and re-exports those goods to higher prices in the U.S. economy. Lifting or changing trade commerce restrictions will bring an influx of new business to Hawaii. I have been talking to a Hawaiian gentleman who has been doing trade and commerce, and I'm thinking to myself, the opportunities there are tremendous. If we were an independent nation, what could we do in terms of getting a piece of that pie? That pie is big. Next, independence. What would that mean? It would mean return of our military bases and perpetual rental income. We need to stop the potential sales of Hawaii military bases designed to pay down the U.S. deficit. Think about that. These military bases need to return to the Native Hawaiian community. We need perpetual income, and the rentals from the rentals of military bases would be, our share of the compensation that's due us for all these years. Hawaii is the only state amongst the 50 states that has not received rental incomes for the use of their military properties. We need to change that. Independence means tariffs. Every year, over $6 billion in tariffs are collected by the United States and Hawaii. As an independent nation, we'll be collecting that. Think about that. We'll be collecting that, not the United States. The nation of Hawaii. When we talk about foreign aid, we're allowing ourselves to receive foreign aid for countries throughout the world. As an independent nation, we have an opportunity through diplomatic means to achieve and receive foreign aid. This is big, big money. If I'm in the nation and we're going to build this nation, we need to have a financial base. Let's think about this. The Scientific and Medical Research Center of the world, given the reality of our location in the Pacific, promoting research and development possibilities would open Hawaii up to financial royalties through the cultivation of health cures in all areas of science, medicine, and technology. Our multi-ethnic community provides the best training ground for world-class doctors. Queen Emma's Medical Center leads the Pacific in the latest medical technology and research. We need to continue our mission. Independence. What does that mean when we speak of the state of Hawaii? Independence may be, for some, a frightening thought. However, an agreement could be negotiated over a transition period, such as the one between Britain and China, regarding the turnover of Hong Kong back to China. The transition, the lessons learned, the transition to our independence may be traumatic for some, but there are ways of alleviating that fear and moving forward as they did, as an example, between Hong Kong and Great Britain. The Hawaiian nation, as an independent nation, would be a financial benefit to the state of Hawaii. Why? We could share in the cost of administering infrastructure. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. We can peacefully coexist during that transition period. We could share in the use of the Capitol building to conduct our legislative sessions when the legislature is not in session. In addition, the Hawaiian Nation could finance areas that the state is unable to take care of now. Independence. We are the people of the Pacific. Hawaii and our people demonstrate to the world that harmony through diversity exists here. We are the people of peace. Our sons should not have to experience another war on foreign turf. War should only be for the protection of our island. We should not lose another son, another brother, another husband, another father, another daughter for political greed and power. Just as the ruling chief, Kahoolawe, sacrificed his life, so all his people of Kahoolawe would not suffer warfare and death. So must Nakamauti understand the highest form of spiritual courage. Keapua sacrificed his life so we could live in peace. Keapua gave us the blessings of being born in Hawaii. Hawaii is the Kiko of the Pacific. Queen Decolonization executed a document with President Grover Cleveland. The Queen locked us into an independence position when she executed the 2 executive agreements with President Grover Cleveland to restore the Kingdom of Hawaii. She locked us in. Under international law, executive agreements by 2 sovereign heads of state are considered to be treaties. Treaties under the U.S. Constitution are the supreme law of the land. All foreign affairs fall under the jurisdiction of the executive branch of the United States. The Kingdom of Hawaii continues to exist under the executive branch of the United States, who has sole jurisdiction over foreign affairs. That responsibility is with the current President of the United States, Barack Obama. The Kingdom of Hawaii continues to exist. Independence is the proper legal standing under international law. In conclusion, what will independence provide? What benefits will it provide if we were to select independence? A superior bargaining position from which to negotiate with other governments. A better chance to limit the number of concessions that would have to be made if we choose state recognition or federal recognition. An opportunity for a more diverse economic base. An opportunity to control our own destiny. I'm a member of Queen Emma Hawaiian Civic Club. Our club carries on the traditions and the vision of Queen Emma, a leader in her own time. Her legacy continues with Queen's Hospital, Eli School, San Property, and many other areas. The legacy that's been left by our royal family to us meant something. We need to pay attention to the many benefits that independence has to offer. Thank you. Mahalo.
Mahalo Keani. Our next speaker is Representative.
Let's see, we have our PowerPoint ready. I was wondering if I could just ask everybody's indulgence. I I thought I was younger on Saturday, so I jumped over a rope and hurt my knee. So, is it okay with everybody if I sit down? And if it's okay, I can move this and we can put this on the floor. So.
Yep.
Okay, start my timer over here. So I'm Kahoolawe Russell Stewart, born and raised here in the Kalihi and Kuakini Mail Rights housing area. And right now I'm a kahu in the Kaneohe area. But I just wanted to share from a certain perspective. You know, I always get nervous when I sit down and share with our people, because the responsibility is so much, you know, and I don't ever want to get to the place where, you know, I'm cocky about anything. You know, I need to stay humble. You know, I don't like the concept of politics. You know, the word politics is from two Greek words. Poly means many. Ticks are bloodsuckers. So, you know, I don't want to participate in that, all right? So I'm just going to talk, you know, just going to share. You know, one of the things that we've, you know, wanted to do, and I think, you know, that there's a way of being able to get along, you know, and to get things done without being a bully or being aggressive in certain ways. You know, last time we got together, we talked about how we can, you know, have OHA give them the tools to get out of the picture. You know, right now, I mean, OHA is in the picture. You know, they hold the funds, but yet, you know, and they are governed by certain rules that they have to abide by. And so we have to understand that and work together with them and give them a way out. You know, so, you know, and we use our weaknesses to do that sometimes. You know, I used the weakness of my knee, and I asked them for help. They helped me. They brought me a chair. You know, I wanted to get rid of the sign that says OHA. Okay? But I didn't have to fight them for that. Right? So now the picture of OHA is out of the way. Okay, so, you know, I did that on purpose because, you know, I just want to express that there are ways of doing things that we don't have to fight. Okay, but we can cooperate with each other and help one another and still get done what is beneficial to both of us. You know, if I had another chair, well, if this chair right here was occupied by our queen, I want to ask you a question. Okay? If this chair was occupied by the queen right now, would we be acting the way we've been acting? Would we be saying the things that we've been saying? Would we be proposing solutions or recommendations that we've been recommending, knowing what the queen wanted? Would we be going against her, or would we be supporting her? You know, those are just questions. And I had to come to that point of answering those questions inside of myself. So I don't have a process to present. I don't. I don't have any good ideas to present. What I want to present today is what the Queen would have me present if I were speaking on her behalf. Okay? To the best of my ability and the best of my knowledge. That's what I want to present. So I want to look at and just put up on the screen what the Queen left behind as a process for her people. Because I believe all of us, you know, we really believe that the Queen wanted the best for her people. And that she was a wise woman, she was smart, she was knowledgeable, she was skillful in international law, and she set up processes to take care of her people. She did not leave us defenseless. All right? So I just want to go over the process and, you know, put it up for you and say, well, this is what the Queen left. Is this good enough for us today? Will it still work? I believe it still will. Okay? So the reinstatement process that I want to look at is this. What is our right to reinstate? Our right comes from is pursuant to the following rights and authorities. Now, authorities are the laws that give us the right to do things. The law of nations. How many of you have read the law of nations? It's a book. It's a bunch of books. But it's, you know, specifically one book that we're going to be talking about. If you haven't read that, then you don't know where we are in our right to reinstate, because that's where it comes from. All the nations of the world use laws of nations in order to have intercourse with other nations and to recognize other nations. At least 17 violations of the law of nations took place. Queen Liliuokalani's protest, the Law of Nations, Book 1, sections 199, international law, those are the sections from Oppenheim, Constitution of the Kingdom of Hawaii in 1887, as amended with those articles there, the election laws of the kingdom. When we're talking about elections and how to hold them, we have the election laws. They are still in writing. We have them today. We don't have to rewrite them. Of Kahoolawe in 1890, chapter, 86, pages 191 to 239. Oh, how did we get to the next one here? Oh, there we go. Okay. So in 1887, Queen Liliuokalani swears an oath to uphold the Constitution of 1887 as stated as follows. So if she swore to it, then she swore to it to end the whole nation. It became law for the whole nation. The foreign relations of the United States, 1894, the affairs in Hawaii. You can look those things up in the appendix, and they will give you this thing that you can look at right here. It says at 2:00 p.m. we entered the room where all the privy councilors were assembled, and there, in their presence, I took the oath of office and swore to abide by the Constitution of 1887. So, Queen, would you like us to still abide by that? At 2 o'clock.
You're answering for.
We also look at the laws of Her Majesty Liliuokalani, the Queen of the Hawaiian Islands. These are the amendments that were made to the Constitution. Those are still in effect. The laws of nations comes out of out of this, what the Queen said here. The Supreme Court shall have the power to declare null and void any such law, ordinance, order, or decree as may, upon mature deliberations, appear to it to be contrary to the Constitution or opposed to the law of nations. So right there, she aligns herself with the law of nations. Her protest, I believe we have that on sound. Can we play that? This is the protest of the Queen. This is what she wrote.
Against myself and the constitutional government of the Hawaiian Kingdom by certain persons.
Laws of nations comes out of this, what the Queen said here. The Supreme Court shall have the power to declare null and void.
Claiming to have established a provisional government of and for this kingdom. Now, to avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps the loss of life, I do this under protest and impelled by said force, yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall undo the actions of its representatives and reinstate me in the authority which I claim as the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands.
Okay, so we see here that the Queen said, until such time as the government of the United States, not the state of Hawaii, not OHA, not any of us, until such time that the government of the United States shall, upon the facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representatives and reinstate me, speaking at that time, she was the sovereign, reinstate the sovereign in the authority which I claim is the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands. Grover Cleveland said it was neither a government de facto nor de jure, speaking of the overthrow government, but by an act of war committed with the participation of a diplomatic representative of the United States and without authority of Congress, this overthrow took place. That the law of nations is founded upon reason and justice. Again, speaking of the law of nations, uses his authority to give back the kingdom which he was trying to do. On the ground that it cannot allow itself at the bottom there to refuse to redress an injury inflicted through an abuse of power by officers clothed with its authority and wearing its uniform, and on the same ground if a feeble but friendly state is in danger of being robbed of its independence and its sovereignty by a misuse of the name and power of the United States, the United States cannot fail to vindicate its honor and its sense of justice by an earnest effort to make all possible reparation. See, we need to have the United States, we need to have Washington, D.C. sitting at this table listening to us. They're the ones that we have to deal with on a nation-to-nation status. The principles apply to the present case with irresistible force. When a special conditions of the Queen's surrender of her sovereignty are recalled, she surrendered not to the provisional government, which is right now the state of Hawaii, actually, but to the United States. She surrendered not absolutely and permanently, but temporarily and conditionally until such time as the facts could be considered by the United States. I don't have time to go through all of these things, but I want to get to the restoration process here. Education is the ultimate key to a successful government. Those that govern need to know these things. The law of nations, international law, treaties and agreements, negotiation and deliberation procedures, all constitutions of the Kingdom of Hawaii, all laws of the Kingdom of Hawaii, rules and procedures of Hawaii, rights and liberties, duties, obligations, forms of government. There are many different forms of government. If we want to choose a form of government after the nation has been reset, we have to know what forms are available. Civil and political societies, election laws of Hawaii. We can't make up our own. There are election laws, miscellaneous laws, codes, rules, etc. Simple civics, election procedure and qualifications. And we see here how they are enumerated. I wish I had more time to go through these individually. The districts of the kingdom were 24 districts. The districts of Kauai, of Oahu, of Maui, of Hawaii. 24 nobles, 24 representatives. 3 upper house and 3 lower house districts of Kauai are shown here. These are the 9 upper house and 9 lower house districts of the island of Oahu. You can see again the districts of Maui, of the Maui group there, of the Big Island of Hawaii. This is the structure of the kingdom, government structure. There was the treasury, kingdom under the Kingdom of Hawaii. We see the treasury, we see the executive, the legislature, and the judicial. You also see the king and queen, or king or queen at that time, was the sovereign. In absence of the king or queen, can we go back to that one? Let's see. How did that go by itself here? In absence of the king and queen, we see the Privy Council and cabinet would be those who would run the government temporarily to bring it back into alignment. The Department of Public Education would be under the Privy Council. The governors of the various islands would be under the cabinet. The Department of the Interior, Department of Foreign Affairs, and Department of Finance would be directly under the rulership. The cabinet is comprised of the Attorney General, Minister of Finance, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of the Interior. Office of the Attorney General would entail the marshals, the sheriff, the deputy sheriff, and the constables. Department of Finance, these are the areas where the Department of Finance and the Finance Minister would have to understand and would have discretion over. The Department of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Article 9, powers and duties in general, the diplomatic and consular agents of foreign nations. The Department of the Interior would cover these areas. The Minister of the Interior would cover these 8 areas: naturalization, government press, post office, shipping, all that kind of stuff. And the Public Instruction, Board of Education, instead of Board of Indoctrination like we have now, and the Bureau of Public Instruction, Inspector General of Schools, etc. Legislative Department would cover the Legislative Assembly, the King and the Cabinet, the House of Nobles, not to exceed 30, and the House of Representatives, no less than 24, no more than 30. This is the House of Nobles as it's broken down by districts. The House of Representatives as broken down by districts. Now this is all set up during the Queen's time. This is what she swore to uphold. Judiciary Department, the Supreme Court is under the Attorney General, the Chief Justice, Clerk of the Court, etc., and all of the circuit courts down below. So you see, we don't have to reset all these things. It's all there. The Supreme Court, with the Chief Justice and the Associate Justices and the circuit courts beneath that, the police courts and the district court. Election proclamation, at least 30 days before a general election, and wherever he received proper notice, at least 20 days before a special election, Minister of the Interior must issue an election proclamation. We need a Minister of the Interior, and transmit copies of the same to the various boards of inspectors of elections throughout the kingdom, or where such election is to be held. Such proclamation shall also be published in Honolulu. Inspectors of elections, I got one more minute, of the duties of the inspectors of the election. It's all laid out what their duties are. We see here, again, more of the same. The qualification of the electors of nobles. So people who can elect the nobles, what are their qualifications? Are you going to be voters? Are you going to be electors? What are the qualifications that you will have to have? How about for the qualifications of the electors of representatives, which is different from the qualification for electors of nobles? What are the nobles? What are their qualifications themselves? Qualifications of the nobles is laid out there. Qualifications of the representatives is laid out. Qualifications of registration, who can register and how to register. All laid out. What disqualifies people. And my time is up, so I'm disqualified from going any further. But there's a lot more. But the Queen set it up. It's there. It's there. Are we going to agree with her, or are we going to revolt?
Revolt.
Hallelujah. So we have time for one more speaker before we go to lunch. And Henry Noel, who was initially going to be our first speaker coming from lunch, has agreed to move up to this spot. So hallelujah.
Oh, I forgot to give this copy. Kalamai. I was hoping they make copies for everybody, but they don't put them on thumb drive. So there you don't have to bother me too much. Okay.
So all of the thumb drive material that's being provided on the screen, and then some of the speakers who didn't necessarily have a PowerPoint but had lots of handouts in Word files, they're going to be uploaded on our oha.org/nationbuilding website, and you can see them there, download it, and have them. So if you want to see this at home, you'll be able to.
Aloha. We had some water. Sorry.
I get you.
First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Henry Noah, and I've been involved with trying to resolve this loss of sovereignty for our Kanaka people now since I've been in high school, which was back in 2002. That's a good try. But anyway, I'm really not going to share with you any historical information, okay, because I believe that the purpose of OHA's Kamau AR, third and fourth, yeah, particularly the third, if you were to read the mission statement, yeah, they shared that this governance summit, yeah, the goal was to develop educational materials that build confidence among our lahui and others that we can achieve political recognition as a nation through one or more viable, well-considered paths, and that such recognition will improve lives. Okay? And when I looked at that, what I saw was OHA has already accepted, yeah, to improve the lives of all Kanaka Maoli people by agreeing to fund and support a process that is controlled by the state, and they also state in Act 195 that they will pursue federal recognition. Okay? And that means that the federal law will control that governing process. So, if OHA is true to its intent, right, and states that if there is a more viable process, then that's the purpose of why I'm here to present to this body, yeah, a process that I believe that every one of us sitting here have the equal opportunity to participate in this process. And I'm talking about if you were a leader of some advocate process for sovereignty, you're a leader of a civic club, you know, you are a trustee for OHA. This is the process, I believe, that everybody has equal footing to participate in. No restrictions other than you would have to sign up so that you can be properly identified. Okay? And if you're Kanaka Maoli, that's your inherent right. And the process that we're advocating, yeah, is what Russell just shared to you guys. Okay? They want to reinstate the process. We believe that in 1999, we fulfilled that obligation and reinstated the form of government. We did exactly what Russell was telling you guys. Okay? We looked at the Hawaiian laws, and all we said was, why we invent the wheel? Let's take these steps. Okay? And when I say we started off with the first convention, about 200 Kanakas. Several foreigners also participated, and this was back in March 13, 1999, that we came. And the purpose why we were there was to simply begin the process of putting together a sovereign, independent governance that we, Kanaka Maoli, can go out into our community from that point on and educate our people to what rights do we still possess, and how can we as a Kanaka Maoli populace be able to accomplish and achieve acquiring those rights. And I believe the only right that we set out to do was to acquire recognition for our Kanaka people. Okay? I mean, it has to be the most simplest thing to comprehend, but it gets so diluted by everybody else's thoughts on what should we do to save the Hawaiian people, when the very first step to me begins with getting the Kanaka people to agree to participate in one process. So this process don't belong, from what I keep hearing, this is Henry Noah's process. We started in March 13, 1999 with 200 of us. And I'm proud to announce today that there's 5,000 individuals that participate today in this process. Registered, okay? And aloha, nova, Yahweh.
Go ahead, Henry, we can still hear you.
Actually, I don't like continue, so I can get on YouTube. No. And basically, okay, what I see, right, is that we have so much leadership available in our Kanaka society. The question that I keep asking myself, how is it possible to get this leadership, to agree to work together? I say that you would have to present something pono. Because if it ain't pono, you're going to know from these leaders that it ain't pono. And that's, to me, that's the conflict that I've seen in the past. It's the conflict that I see today. And it's the conflict I see going to continue if OHA has its ways. I don't care how many times the trustees will stand up in front of you and keep telling you how they're going to fix the role to have you, under duress. Ain't nobody going to listen to you. Ain't nobody going to listen to that. Why? You got to realize the only thing that they want from the 100,000 Kanakas who will sign up, who don't know what some of us in here knows, I'm not saying all, I'm saying some of us here knows, is for the Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian Americans to participate in one state and federal funded process. That's all they want. Okay? Why? The moment you do that, okay, this is what happens. You're going to change your identity. This is my intro. That is fast back there. Okay? This is my intro. It will change your identity from Hawaiians/Kanaka Maoli people to a U.S. Native American Hawaiian. To qualify and become a federal recognized citizen. That's all they want. Okay? Second, give the U.S. the right to finally claim our national crown government and private lands that were illegally confiscated since 1893. We never gave it up. They even told you that in the Public Law 103-150, paragraph 29. They apologized to us, and they gave notice to the world that they told us they're sorry. Okay? You know what the next move is? They got the right now to come to us and get us to give it to them. Okay? Number 3. Yeah? Kana'i Olofalo goes through. These things all going to occur without you even knowing. Give the U.S. the right to show the world that we, the Kanaka Maoli people, agree through the devious U.S. federal legislation, Native Hawaiian Reorganization Act, the Akaka Bill, yeah, and the Kana'i Olofalo Road Commission to extinguish our right to sovereign independence because we accept federal recognition. I don't know about you, Kanaka, but I've been saying this every time I show up. Okay? Because I'm not interested in teaching you Kanaka history. You guys had 40 years, some of you had 50 years to learn that. And if you never catch on yet from watching or Lelo or whatever, I don't know why I gotta sit you listening to the same rap over and over and over. I mean, let's all, yeah, change our tune. Because, like I told you, OHA already set sail their ship. And the only thing when move that course is if we, the independent believers, come out of here today, yeah, with a process to offer to them that we going to an election and you will fund this election. Okay? And we're going to develop the educational material that will help the 100,000 Kanakas out there who don't know what the hell is going on, so they can learn what nation within a nation going to give to them and their next generations, and what we offering one simple independent process where we make the decisions. Us Kanaka. Okay? And some people want to know where I'm getting this information from. How can I come to this conclusion that we're giving all of this up? Well, let me share this with you. Yeah, I make this statement based upon facts in law and precedent that occurred to Native American Indians and Alaskans. Okay? 2 indigenous populations in America. Okay? In 1936, the U.S. federal government introduced and passed legislation named the Native American Reorganization Act. That was agreed to by the Native American Indians, and the result was, in exchange for federal recognition, they knowingly and unknowingly gave up their Aboriginal land title rights to the U.S. government. They're sick today. When I talk to some of the chairpersons, yeah, of tribes, they cannot believe that their ancestors did that. But you know what? When you're in one situation that you can be taken advantage of, yeah, you're going to take whatever they offer because you're looking at the desperate situations. And I cannot blame the Indian and Alaskans to have done that. But today, I don't see us living the same hardship the Native Indians live in. That's the one thing that I see, that too bad we're not in that condition, because if we were, we would be united because we would have that desperation to unite. Today I don't see the desperation. As Kanakas, we live in good, but that's still not the point. I never come here to talk about living good. I'm coming up here to talk about we have to make this change if we plan to survive and pass this on to our future. And this is not a hard change to make. Okay? In 1971, the same fate occurred to the Alaskans when they agreed to U.S. federal legislation called Native Alaskan Land Claims Act. That is, in exchange for federal recognition, they gave up their Aboriginal land title rights to the U.S. government. The point is, Kanaka, we are in the same predicament that the Native Indians and Alaskans were in and can no longer deny the fate of those 2 tribes. Because this educational material revealed and exposed the devious actions conducted by the U.S. and state government officials to connive the Native American Hawaiians to give up the Kanaka Maoli rights to their national lands and their sovereign independent status. Okay? And we're not going to let that happen. All right? Because, what is the reinstated Hawaiian government? Okay? Simply put, RHG represents the former lawful government of Hawaii. That's who we are. Everything that you saw Russell Wynn present, the 24 House of Nobles, the 24 representatives, back in March 13, 1999, I really congratulate the 200 Kanakas who came forward, because that's where we went hammer out where the women couldn't vote. Was in that convention. Yep. No, we went put the provisional government together, and you know what we said? We need to address some of the problems that we're going to encounter if we don't fix it in this legislative assembly that we put together. And they came on their own from the 24 districts. You know, I'm going to tell you, it took me 3.5 years to organize one convention. Try to get representatives from every island according to the kingdom law from the 24 districts. Took me 3.5 years. Why? So I can stand here today and share with you that a process was conducted, according to kingdom law, infused with international law standards, so that this day we expected it to arrive. We actually knew that this day was going to come, where we could come and talk to our leaders. You want to be a leader in this community? Then let your people elect you. Amen. Okay? In our process, I'm proud to announce to you that I got elected as the Prime Minister. But this was done by our constituents. The point is, there was a process that you have to perform. Okay? You have to be a part of. And everybody, I know people in here that I've spoke to, why you guys don't participate? We started in 1999. We had the next election in 2003. And then I remember we was at the palace in 2007, and I told everybody at the palace, a lot of these leaders are here, why you guys don't participate in one election? Oh, yeah, because you guys control. How are we going to control one election? I can tell you it's very difficult to conduct an election of that magnitude without funding. And we have the documentation. We documented every step that we did. It's an archive that we can stand behind and share with our people. Listen, we, the Kanaka Maoli people, took the time to develop a process so we could come forward and present it to our people. And we presented it 4 times. 2011, we had another election, guys. Okay? And each election, we gathered more and more Kanakas. And right now, I can share with you, that our citizen base, has actually gotten to 5,000, with funding from OHA announcing, that we will participate in an independent election. And the educational material shows the difference between nation within a nation, and independence. That 100,000 that they claim that they want to have their process conducted will turn their judgments, because they're now understanding. They're going to know, like how we know in here. We cannot permit us to get railroaded by the U.S. government. Okay? Now, I'll run through this real quickly because I don't have to. I think Russell covered it for me. You know, we got the House of Representatives. Okay? Boom. What was and is the goals of the reinstated Hawaiian government? We realized that if we could acquire proper claimant status, we would be able to pursue recognition. Okay? And then to establish a lawful political body to represent our Kanaka Maoli. Because without a government, you're not going to be able to proceed. You're going to be only come forward and keep sharing rhetoric over and over and over. With the government, you share progress. And our progress report is today, just yesterday in Maui Court, 4 of our cases all got dismissed. Yeah? For traveling, right to travel, for conducting business under our government authority. Okay? Right now, we're up against A and B for 567 acres. Yeah? They're trying to get one preliminary injunction. 4 separate court hearings, yeah, since January. We got one in May 28th, the 5th one. And every time we show up, they realizing A and B don't own the property. They don't know what to do. And I believe that's the reason why the courts are stalling. They're stalling. So we're progressing as we move along. But this government belongs to you. How does it belong to you? You're going to agree to participate in one election. At least tell yourself that election is going to preserve your inherent rights. Your sovereign independent rights. Don't take nothing, man. Okay? And we also authorize and defend our sovereign rights. The right to reclaim our national lands, to exercise political authority, to grant rights to our nationals, the right to travel, the right to do business. Okay? We also developed diplomatic relations with other sovereign nations. Why? The UN cannot recognize one nation. Okay? They cannot. You got to get recognition from other sovereign nations. So I've been fortunate that our Kanakas who believe in this process have been able to provide funding to go and visit some very powerful nations. And my job when I got there was to explain to them that a process to acquire sovereign independence has been initiated, and we are here to explain how we're moving forward. And when we get to that pinnacle, will you come forward to recognize our nation? Okay? And we have liaisons from these countries who we talk to and who we are now currently telling them that the opportunity is arising, that our people haven't had the opportunity to participate in one national election to acquire their sovereign recognition. Okay? What sets the Reinstatement government apart from other sovereignty process? You know, we maintain an operating and functioning government. This is the reward for us doing it. Nobody gets paid since March 13, 1999. We've had 39 conventions. Everybody pay their own way. You get elected, your reward is you gotta pay for your airplane ticket, your room, your meals, and you gotta attend the convention. When we first started, we had to conduct four conventions a year because that's how much work had to take place so that we could come out and we have laws. We adopted the kingdom laws. We amended kingdom laws. You want to open up a bank in the kingdom? The laws are in place to do that already. You want to open up on foreign trade? Yeah, the laws are in place to make that happen already. We're having the next election, 2015. This is 2014. The next election can be conducted, with ample amount of time to educate our people to the two separate processes. And in my heart, I know that 100,000 Kanaka Maoli who are like deers walking into one headlight, don't know what's going on, going to finally realize that there in fact exists a true and correct process, okay, for them. I don't need to cover the rest. I've been looking at pow, and I just want to close, okay, with this. I just want to close with this. And I thought she was on my side because she was my secretary last time I was there. But anyway, listen, in my closure, okay? The current Kahoolawe educational material is contradictory to the intended goal. Okay, well, first, that only those Hawaiians who register on the roll shall qualify to participate. You know, number two, there is no mentioning that the governing entity shall be controlled by the state of Hawaii laws or, there's nothing that in there that states that the Act 195 shall reaffirm Hawaii's statehood. You know, why would they be doing that? Ask yourself the question. When you get illegally overthrown, everything that follows is illegal. Everything. But they need you, as Kanakas, to affirm that. Because that's the only way you're going to give them authority. Okay? They're going to be able to acquire. Number four, that the state-controlled Hawaiian governing entity will seek federal recognition. That's what it says. Okay? All these contradictions is not being explained to the Lahui. Because if the Kanaka Maoli was told the truth about the state-controlled Kanai'olavalu process, our Lahui will lose confidence. That's what we see here. We don't have our confidence because we cannot trust what OHA is doing and not support the heinous process to achieve political recognition. The Reinstated Hawaiian government has never wavered or compromised our goal of acquiring sovereign independence. Our educational material is focused on describing the value of acquiring sovereign independence free of state and federal control. These values include sovereign independence means no more control of federal, state, and county laws that has plagued our people for 120 years. Number two, acquiring political authority to make proper decisions on how and what happens in our nation. No more denying our rightful claim to our lands and what happens on the land. Stop desecrating our sacred sites. No more GMO, no more unwanted developments, no more restrictions on water rights. The list goes on and on and on. I hear complaints after complaints after complaints. Go put back your nation. Get rid of the source that's causing the complaint. That's how we fix our nation. That's how we get healthy. Number three, legal jurisdiction will replace de facto jurisdiction. No more de facto judgments based on Hawaii revised statute laws that contradict kingdom laws. Number four, having the right to control the income currently controlled by the de facto state of Hawaii and the county governments. The local government will be able to collect all fees that the federal government has been collecting, air and sea space payments, collect lease rentals for military bases that the U.S. government occupy for free, or peanuts, such as $1 per year paid by the U.S. government to the state for all of Makua Valley. The culture would be protected and enhanced by the lawful Hawaiian government. The spiritual healing can begin and our people can finally remove the hewa and grow as nationals of their nation. Collect on back rent and reparations. I mean, what I foresee is, one, vibrant, robust nation coming out, man, coming out. And we just have to agree. I mean, today, okay, if you want to present on this, I got questions for you. Trust me, okay? And if you like ask me questions, fire away. Because I'm really tired of hearing rhetoric, okay? These are many positive values than, there are many more positive values than negative values. America would agree to retaining Pearl Harbor because of the value of maintaining their presence in the Pacific. This lease rental alone will surpass all the monies the state makes in a year. If America don't want it, England, France, or Germany will. Kanaka, this is a new global world that we will enter, and with the advantages that we possess, I know that the transition from illegal occupation to sovereign independence will be supported by the majority nations in the world. RHG has diplomatic relations with some of these nations, and they can't wait for what we can do. Okay? All this starts with the first step. Pursuing sovereign independence for Hawaii, reinstated Hawaiian government has prepared this opportunity, and we are ready and competent to be that viable process that all states in the goal of Kamau RAR3. We humbly request that all Kanaka Maoli accept our proposal to conduct the election and establish the lawful Hawaiian government to represent all our people. That's all we're asking for. Okay? Everybody, like I said, you want king, you want queen, you want prime minister, whatever you think we are. Let's go to the booth. Let's go to the electoral polls and make it happen so that we can now start unifying our government to fix the heifer that we always have to confront, and I see that it can end. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Henry. I just want to make one comment, and that is to say that I hope you understand that we would never, as OHA, have held this discussion and have put this up on live stream and will keep it up on live stream if there was not the intent to educate those 100, and actually it's 122,000 Hawaiians on the roll currently. So we do want them to hear you. We do want them to be educated by what you have to share. And that is why this is being live streamed, and that is why we're doing what we're doing today. So we are so grateful that these voices have come forward, these leaders have come forward to educate our people. And this is indeed the beginning of getting a more enlightened Lahui to make good decisions for our future. So with that, can we have Kahoolawe Russell Stewart come and offer our blessing for our Ainahake, our lunch today?
Try to trick us again. I'm sure the prime minister's out there.
I was going to say something. No. All right. Just want to thank Uncle for all of the wonderful people that he created, friendships and the possibility of unity, which the whole concept comes from him. Lord, we thank you as the Lord of the universe, Lord of our kingdom. We thank you for the food that we're going to be eating. We thank you for those that have prepared it. We ask you to just bless all the people that are here today. We thank you for help. We thank you for progress as we move forward in this. We thank you for unity. And we thank you for grace and your love to prevail. Thank you.
So, Tammy Smith, guys, Halekealoha Aipono, provided the food for lunch. How was? Yeah, so if you guys are around in Kahoolawe, she has her restaurant, so check it out. So, Herbert host daughter, yeah? Yeah. So if you want to support a good Hawaiian restaurant, Hawaiian-owned restaurant, a Hawaiian chef, Tammy Smith, and then you know who her food is. You guys have them last time, and this time is made type. What is the restaurant called? So I know her catering business is called Kealoha. Okay, so similar to her catering business, Halekealoha Aipono. And so yeah, Aipono food and Onoloa, Hawaiian food, can't go wrong, yeah? So mahalo for that, Tammy. I know she's over there, she can't hear me, but she knows I appreciate her. We have this afternoon 5 speakers in the lineup. So the first speaker, and I'll just take a moment to remind everybody about our ground rules. And mahalo everybody. For the most part, we were awesome. We followed our ground rules, letting every speaker speak, offer the entirety of the presentation. We're holding off on the questions to a little bit more. And if you're wondering what all of these chairs are for, they're for the panel of presenters to come up. And they don't have to be stuck behind the wall. They can scoot up, but we're just going to have them there for now. for the panel to come up afterwards and we can ask questions. So if you guys can hold the questions till then. And then if you guys want to have conversations, please enjoy the conversations outside. That's my ka'i. You have to go to the law. My ka'i is 641 and 719. Thank you.
Stay out of my room.
I think that's it for the ground rules, yeah? Respect, aloha, we know how to do all that. Our first speaker this afternoon is going to be Dan Osorio. Oh, you guys? Okay, they're conferring that a while. After that, we're going to have Michelle Kahoolawe from CNHA. And then Daviana McGregor from the Protect Kahoolawe Ohana. As you folks know, Kahoolawe is one of those land bases that will automatically be part of the Hawaiian Nation. And then following Daviana will be Walter Reedy, and then we're going to be closing out the panels with Bumpy Tanahere. So that's our lineup. And then our QA panel. Mako ka. Okay. Mahalo nui. Do you understand or you want to sit?
So our presentation is really fairly short. I'm going to read it, and I'm hoping that in light of the fact that we probably will take about 7 minutes to read this, if it's all right if we ask another member of MANA to come up and say a few words as well, Kalekoa, because I don't think he's scheduled to speak. Is that all right with everyone?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. Into the mic. Aloha mai, I'm Jonathan Osorio, and I'm representing here on behalf of MANA. Movement for Aloha no Ka'aina is an organization that's about 8 years old. It's informal, it's not a 501c3. I don't think we're even incorporated. And really it's an organization that was put together envisioning itself to be the foundation of a political party, assuming that we will have an independent government at some point. We wanted a political party that would espouse the principles of a Hawaiian government, such as complete independence from the United States, demilitarization, and of course, aloha aina, love for the land, and economic use of the land that is in keeping with Hawaiian traditions. That's basically what MANA stands for. And now I'll read our statement. MANA, Movement for Aloha no Ka'aina, has been facilitating a series of meetings attended by Oiwi scholars, community activists, educators, and Hawaiian independence leaders ever since the Office of Hawaiian Affairs announced its intention to bring an end to the registration of Hawaiians through Kana'i'oluwalu and move toward the organizing of a Hawaiian government. In an effort to preserve the intent of OHA to have a fair and unbiased process going forward, and recognizing that OHA had in the past spent in the neighborhood of $20 million to lobby in Washington and advertise in Hawaii and the US in favor of the Akaka bill and federal recognition. And in light of recent announcements from OHA that delegates for a constitutional convention should meet as early as September of this year, MANA and its supporters make the following appeals to the Board of Trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We strongly urge OHA to do away with the current timetable involving the creation of a Hawaiian government for the following reasons. 1, OHA has lobbied and advertised for one form of government, federal recognition, for almost 10 years. In the interest of openness and fairness, other strategies and models of government should be given at least as much time as the proponents for federal recognition. 2, the United States had 61 years from the Newlands Resolution to the Statehood Act to create an educational and social system that resulted in large numbers of Kanaka who conceived of themselves as Americans. That is twice as many years as there has been a sovereignty movement in Hawaii. 3, proponents of an expedited process claim that a favorable political climate exists in Washington But that climate favors a single model, federal recognition. Hurrying to a political agreement privileges federal recognition. That's the first thing that we're asking for, we're urging actually OHA to adopt in order to follow its own intention to have an open and unbiased process. Do away with this immediate timetable. The second recommendation, we recommend that OHA detach all participation in the process of creating a Hawaiian government from the Kana'i Oluwalu role for the following reasons. One, Kana'i Oluwalu owes its existence to state legislation, Act 195, which limits the scope and extent of self-determination for Oiwi. Two, Kana'i Oluwalu has been hopelessly flawed by combining active registrants with passive registrants from other lists whose names were combined with Kana'i Oluwalu without their free, prior, and informed consent. Three, the numbers of people who are registered with Kana'i Oluwalu without their prior knowledge and without lifting a finger to actually register vastly outnumbers those who registered with the intent to participate. Four, if OHA allows only those on the Kana'i Oluwalu rolls to participate in the creation of this government, it hands participation and a controlling block to a majority of people who may not have the slightest interest in the future of Hawaiian government, much less an independent government, while barring participation from those like you, who have been actively involved organizing, educating, and exhorting our people toward political sovereignty for decades. So that's the second recommendation. Here's the third. We acknowledge that a fair process requires that OHA make revenues and resources available to segments of our lahui who are campaigning and educating our people for a political sovereignty that is not federal recognition. MANA and its supporters wish to propose educational programs including community outreach, internet resources, video production and broadcast, and request an expedited process for obtaining grants and funding for this education. Some of us are prepared to submit funding proposals so long as there is sufficient time to create these educational materials, and so long as our people are assured of their ability to participate, whether or not they have signed the Kana'i Oluwalu roll. And I'd like to make something really, really clear here. We are not saying that we want to open up funding for MANA. We want to see funding open up for education for independence. This has been signed by Noelani Goodyear Ka'opua, Terry Keko'olani, Ili Malong, Manu Ka'iyama, Dexter Ka'iyama, Andre Perez, Scott Kekueva Kikiloi, Ikai Kahasi, and Jonathan Osorio. I'm going to say one last thing, and then I'd like to ask Kaleko to come up and take the rest of my time. When we have made this statement before, last Monday, Colette Machado basically informed us at the table that the reason for hurrying wasn't necessarily to push federal recognition, but to protect the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and that a change in administration in Washington might make OHA's existence much more tenuous. In thinking about this, and I really hope that the OHA trustees are listening, it seems to us that the way the federal government works, it's unlikely that Congress or the President are actually going to interfere with something that is mandated by the state of Hawaii. Therefore, if OHA is going to be really threatened, it's going to come through the courts. It's going to come through the composition of the Supreme Court and what they decide based on somebody complaining that OHA is, unconstitutional. And sort of my opinion on this is that, there's already a 5-4. In other words, if all 4 of the liberal justices ruled for us, we would still be outvoted by the 5 conservative members that are presently on the court. It could be that in a few years it might be 6-3 or 7-2, but it really doesn't make any difference. 5-4 is just as good as 7.3 or 7.2. So we don't think that there's so much of a hurry here. And then the last point I would make is this. No matter what happens going forward, no matter what happens, what government we create, OHA is gone. If we create the independent government that we want, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs will be gone. If federal recognition takes place, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs will be gone. OHA needs to think ahead about when it's gone, and it needs to support this initiative from its people in the fullest possible sense, while it is in a position to do so. Thank you.
Vina me ke aloha. E to hopo atani, e to maoli ola. E ola hoki o maoli ola. E ola yo e tani tune don, oia ho oia e ola. I ho kahi, kahi kamanao. I ho kahi, kahi bu'uwai. I ho kahi, kahi ke aloha. E mau ke ea o ka aine ka pono. See, the confusion is we're forgetting the wisdom that has been passed on by our kupuna. One heart, one people, one voice. Our Queen Miliu Kalani said, the voice of the people is what? The voice of God. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Not the voice of Governor Abercrombie, because that's what we're facing here right now. Not the voice of certain legislators, not the voice of the trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, but the voice of the people. And I will submit to you, I don't care what process that goes forward, if the voice of the people is not at the center of this movement, poho, hema hema, na vali vali, hea kamea ponoai, o kamana, o kapoe. So wherever we head, for me, that's the platform I push. Our kupuna also said, kulia ikanu. Kulia ikanu. Not just enough is good. Or we're going to take what we can get. Or that's the only process that get. Because that's what I hear. Me, I have faith in our people. I live my life with faith in our people. I live my life with a faith in this place. Because our core never put us in this place to be pushed around and manipulated and led like sheep to our deaths. If we will survive as a people, it's not just about 10 years from now. It's not about just some Supreme Court decision. If we will think we got a plan for 100 generations. Because you see, our people, we've been around this place for 1,000 generations from Lahi Lahi. And I will submit, if we work together, locally, we'll be here for 1,000 more. The great Malcolm X said, the biggest mistake is organizing a sleeping people. The biggest mistake is organizing a sleeping people. You have to first wake them up to their heritage, their humanity, and then you get action. He didn't say go and make a list of names and just go and choose multiple choice and hope for the best. He should have pointed out and said, Kuli Kanu demands more than that. Kupuna taught us, be mayao. Whatever you do hanapono. You do mayao. Not hema hema. And I look at the process that's going on right now, and I've shared some of that. To me, it's hema hema. If at the very beginning, from the foundation, doesn't come from our people, something is wrong. If from the very beginning it doesn't benefit our people, something is wrong. If from the very beginning it turns its back on our own people, something is wrong. Because right now, this process that OHA currently supports, Act 195, Kanaya Lovalu, is turning its back on people like me. He's telling Kahoolawe, all that you say and you do, it kalamai. But you never sign this Kanai Olovalo list. So you out. He's telling me, Kahoolawe, Johnny Kello from California, who may have no idea what the hell's going on in Hawaii. His right is protected. But Kahoolawe, you, your family, your in-laws, your kids, kalamai, you out. My point is, we gotta get past that. I asked the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, I asked our people, we gotta have the courage to say, we can do it. We don't need Governor Abercrombie to tell us to unify us. Only us can unify our people. That's period. And I believe that. I get no fear. I'll sit with anybody from any place in the world. I have no fear. Yeah, as the great Gandhi said, Satyagraha, the truth force. You know, the truth is so powerful. And I agree. That Uncle Bumpy and others out there who say, when you present the truth to our people, they don't come. Then therefore, why is this process being rushed through? Who benefits from a populace that's not as educated? Who benefits from a people rushed into some kind of corral? Not our people. See, therefore, I would submit to you, remember this. In any political science 101 lesson, you have the oppressor and the oppressed, the dominated, the colonizer, the colonized, the settler, the native, the slave master and the slave. The only time the oppressed are disunified is because the oppressor was able to come down and manipulate some of the oppressed to create disunity amongst the oppressed. So that the oppressor now can manipulate the situation to keep their control and power of oppression over the oppressed. So the lesson for all oppressed people is that we got to be strong enough, united enough, committed enough, and have the courage enough to say, we're going to do it together. What should we do? Exactly what you see going on like here today. This is the first time in many years that we've had these kinds of opportunities and discussions to share. And it's not always pleasant. But what did Kamehameha tell us? Imu na poki, a inu wikawai ava. Going forward, my younger brothers and sisters, and drink the bitter waters. Because there's no turning back. He never tell us the water will be sweet. He's telling us it's going to be bitter. Because something of value is bitter. Struggle is never easy. You think the powers to be led by people like Abercrombie will just walk away and say, oh yeah, Hawaiians, you deserve all this stuff. No, they won't. You're foolish if you believe that.
Conflict of interest.
It's going to take struggle. It's conflict. Their interest is to maintain power over us. So I asked Oha, let go of Abercrombie's hand. Have the courage to tell Abercrombie, you have no business in our self-determination. Tell Abercrombie, he has no business telling the world he's giving Mauna Kea to the world. And if any of you are confused about Abercrombie, go and read what he says. He does not have the best interests of our people. He has a conflict of interest to maintain and protect those who exploit our people and our lands and resources. Kamawa o kaaina, wamau ke o kaaina. It doesn't say Constitution A, doesn't say Constitution B, King that. Those are tools that we use. You don't get confused. Those are just the tools that we use to protect what? Ke o kaaina. And we use these tools, but we got to remember there's a difference between tactics and destination. The destination has to always be Ea o Ka'aina. So I ask very quickly that we make a statement of unity amongst all of us, that we are unified. We let go of Abercrombie's hand. We unify in spirit. And we're going to struggle. Number two, we got to push back this timetable. Obviously, somebody is pushing this timetable for their own benefit. At whose expense? Our people's expense. And number 3, the mandate. Who can speak on behalf of our people? But our people. Not the Office of Hawaiian Affairs negotiating in Washington, D.C. Not the leadership of Kana'i Oluvalo in Washington, D.C. They don't have the mandate. They may have some backers. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui John, mahalo nui Kleikoa. Michelle Kahoolawe. And the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement.
Thank you. Aloha. Sorry we weren't able to be here this morning. It was our quarterly board meeting, so I'm apologetic to have missed this morning. I'm not here to tell OHA or anybody else in the room how to do this, what to go. I was asked to do 2 things specifically, to talk about the process and specifically how does CNHA approach the rebuilding of our Hawaiian nation. I'm reading your question, Kehau. So our approach has been, CNHA is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization with a 21-member board and about 150 NGOs that make up the network that is the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And so our members are active in housing, education, healthcare, cultural practitioners, the whole gamut. We convene, and our work has been around convening Hawaiians to try to get us together. Most folks know of our annual Native Hawaiian Convention, to try and exchange ideas, to network, to talk about what others are doing in the community, to try to build that network and educate our people. Our mission is to enhance the cultural, economic, and political and community development of Native Hawaiians. And so inherent in our mission is our duty to serve, and that is what we have been doing. So when you ask us, OHA, what has our approach been? For the last 13 years, our approach has been in an effort to unify Native Hawaiian community, and we do that through several programs. We are an active policy center, and we have, as many of you know, done advocacy work both at the state and federal level. We try to provide access to capital to Hawaiian communities that are sometimes underserved. That's been another strategy. Again, our convention and exposing ourselves to other natives around the country, that we have definitely engaged with other native folks in Alaska and in Indian country, and also to other indigenous groups in the Pacific. I'm trying to get this out because I can't get it in the right spot. What I would like to say about our approach, what has CNHA's approach been? And many folks will say our approach has been federal recognition. We keep talking about recognition, sovereignty, self-governance. CNHA's position has been about self-governance for ourselves. Native Hawaiians creating a native government where we get to decide for ourselves what is good for us. We will not deny having worked at the federal, at the state level. But we believe that a governing entity, a native governing entity, is required, that we have spent time on building or rebuilding our Hawaiian government, so that we have an opportunity as a governing entity to negotiate with other governing entities, whether that's the state, the federal government, other countries, or any other country. So it's been about self-governance. The platform of what CNHA has advocated for the last 13 years has been about self-governance, and that has been where we've been. First and foremost, the steps taken, and that what we believe as the consortium of our NGOs is to empower the NGOs to continue doing the work they're doing. What have we been doing? We've been supporting our Native Hawaiian organizations to continue doing, if they're farming, to have resources available to continue farming. If they're in housing, to help build their capacity to continue developing housing, because those are direct responses to the needs of our people. And that is the work that we have been doing for the last 13 years. I also want to be clear that we have never taken a position to stand in your way. That we don't believe that any one position or that any one group or one person should impede on the opinion of another. That I agree with our last speaker, the voices of our people. Our people can speak for themselves. I disagree with the fact that our people are uneducated. Hawaiians are awesomely smart. They are educated. They do understand. And I would ask that we also consider about the voices of those who have placed their names, right? That they have an opinion and they have a process that they see as well. And if you're saying we shouldn't shut out a Hawaiian voice, I would ask, what about the voices of those 200,000 that are on the list? Those are Native voices too. Right, I see you shaking your head. Those are Native voices too, right? So I'm saying we're not going to say, no, I don't believe that any sort of federal or state recognition has been the barrier, has stood in the way of achieving what many of you in the room have worked for. Nor do we intend to stand in your way as you go forward with that. But there are many voices on that list, also Native Hawaiians, who see a process, who agree with that process. It is a quick timeline, but I would beg to differ. When I look at Leimana, I've seen photos only of Leimana being on this journey and your son was a child. Doing this, he's 40 years old now. So, why now? It's not like we just started this because OHA made an announcement. We've been on this journey for many, many years. For the last 14 years, I've been dragging my son to these meetings. When I see Leimana's son, I don't want my son to be 40 years old and saying, sorry, we left you at the same exact place where we were. That's all I'm saying. So what are the steps? Basically my message is we reject that any single Hawaiian can impede upon the position of another Hawaiian. And so I will say to you that Kana'i Olovalu is voluntary. You don't have to be on the roll. You don't have to place your name. It's totally voluntary. Right? And it has to be voluntary. No one can force you to be on that list. Governor Abercrombie is not holding our hand to make us be on the list. If you decide to place your name, that is up to you. But for those Hawaiians that have placed their name, they have an opinion too. They are also Hawaiians and also have a vision and a process that they see going through. So again, I will end by saying that CNHA's position has always been, since our inception, that we are about self-governance, that restoring a Native governing entity that has the ability. County government has its own sovereignty to govern over its residents and its people. State government is a sovereign government over its residents and its constituents. And we support a Native governance that at the core of its existence does everything it does with our people in mind. Is our culture thriving? Is our language thriving? Are our people being properly cared for with health? Are they housed? We want to have a governing entity that can negotiate with other levels of government to make sure that we have all of those things for our people. So that has been our position. That remains our position. We have placed our names. Not all, some members have not, but that is a choice that's totally up to them. And so my comments to you really lie in, we are not standing in your way. We are not saying that any kind of recognition at the state or federal level or any government-to-government relationship does not impede you from going after what you have sought after. Nor do we plan on standing in your way. The recognition that we have sought, or the governing entity that we have sought, has not been the barrier to achieving recognition by the UN. And then we have waited over 150 years. So the rush is not because this started a month ago or 3 weeks ago or last week. Our people have been doing this work for hundreds of years. Thank you.
Question. Could you have gotten those votes without the $20 million in the media? Could you have gotten those votes from those Hawaiians?
That's a free place.
Can we wait for the
answer all the questions on the panel.
during the QA time? So,
No, but
hold on. So the next speaker is going to be Daviana McGregor from the Kahoolawe Ohana.
What was her name? She's a Dana girl.
No,
Let's change her up.
Michelle Ohana. Mahalo, Michelle. Aloha kako. And aloha aina. I asked if we could be included in this discussion as I heard it unfolding today. On April 8th was 10 years since the Navy left Kahoolawe after the cleanup of 10 years. They finally totally left the island 10 years ago on April 8th. On May 7th will be 20 years since the U.S. Navy transferred the title to the island to the state of Hawaii at ceremonies at Palauea on Maui, 20 years. And Kahoolawe still stands ready to be embraced by a sovereign governing entity recognized by the state and federal government. Because what's holding up Kahoolawe from being part of our lahui, oiwi, is a law that says that the state of Hawaii holds Kahoolawe in trust for eventual transfer to the sovereign Hawaiian entity when it is recognized by the state and federal government. We stand waiting for that to happen. Kahoolawe stands waiting for that to happen. And we're not alone. We have many other land bases, communities, healthcare programs, educational programs, who are all waiting for us to have the standing that we need as a people, as long as Hawaii is claimed as a sovereign, under the sovereign authority of the U.S., we need to have standing and recognition that is afforded to indigenous people within the United States to protect our entitlements, our claims, our ancestral lands, and the practices of our religion. Our ohana doesn't have a position on sovereignty, which path to go, because we support all paths to sovereignty. We support state recognition, we support federal recognition, we support total independence. And our members represent all of those points of view in that manao. Uncle Harry Mitchell, our kupuna, told us, we're all on the same mountain. We're all kulia ikanu'u of that mountain to full self-determination, to full independence. We're all seeking that. But we're all going on different paths. And as an ohana, we should support everybody going on their path and support and lift them up. And whoever gets there first might cut iloa. But support each other to get along that path. We have also, our mission is to spread aloha aina, work for aloha aina on Kanaloa, Kahoolawe, and on each of our home islands. And that means aloha aina at all levels. Loving the land and the natural resources, caring for our aina, caring for our ocean. It means nationalism. It means being strong for our nation, our lahui oiwi, and its self-determination. And at the deepest level, it means that we recognize our gods and we bring them back into our lives, and that the land is our spiritual source of strength. The land is what we want to protect and elevate. We want to, as an ohana we've said, have the island be a pu'uhonua for all of our groups to come. We invite all of you, please come have a session on our island. Makanai is trying to make a mua. We're going to have a mua so we could invite everyone to come and there on the mua to envision our future as a lahui oiwi. We don't have that mua completed in Honakanaya. We have a mua that we built in August of 1992 with the Parli Kanakaole as the kahu. And that mua stands ready to receive everyone to come and leave your political labels aside and come and envision together what is our future as a nation. So we invite you. We've been putting out that invitation. The island needs to be that place, a safe place for everyone to come together and dream about this future nation. And as the nation proceeds, whichever nation we are building, our goal as the ohana is to be assured that your vision for the island is to keep it a sacred center for our lahui, that this is one of the important, we have many sacred places, we have many sacred centers, and Kahoolawe is one of those most important sacred places that we want to elevate and become a center for our culture to be practiced and for people to come from different schools of our culture and our arts and our sciences and master our skills there. And it's not the only place, but it certainly is one of the most important places because it's free of all the distractions we have on our home islands. Let's see. I wanted to add some personal observations from my work as a historian and at Ethnic Studies Department at UH Manoa for your consideration. First of all, those who are advocating for the independent Hawaii nation, that Hawaii nation cannot just be a nation of Native Hawaiians. It is a nation of everyone who was born and raised in Hawaii. The nation did not stop evolving at the overthrow. It continued to grow and evolve. And it continued to include all who were born and raised in our islands, not just those who were recognized as citizens under the illegal 1887 Constitution, because that was a racist constitution. It was a sexist constitution. It excluded women, and it excluded all Asians who were living in the islands at that time from participating. So I want to point out that the nation that was inscribed in the United Nations in 1946 was a Hawaii nation that was multi-ethnic, that was inclusive of all the inhabitants in Hawaii at that point in time. So that was what was recognized as the nation that had a right to exercise self-determination. And all of those inhabitants living in Hawaii in 1946 and their descendants, at least, should be participants in the process of reestablishing the independence of Hawaii. The second thing that I'd like to point out is that if you look at how the United States treated Hawaii and Native Hawaiians during the territorial period, they had two different policies. One policy was to look at Hawaii as this nation that they had claimed sovereignty over and who they were occupying, and to treat it as a territory, to colonize it, to take away our language, to assimilate, not only take away Hawaiian language, but all the other people's languages, to force all of the children in Hawaii to speak English only, not only Hawaiians, but all of Keiki in Hawaii. So that was their policy toward the territory, to Americanize it, to assimilate it. But the policy toward Native Hawaiians was different. Because the United States, even at that time, recognized, and the US Congress, more so than the existing Congress, acknowledged that Native Hawaiians were indigenous people like the Native Americans. And they state this in policy. When they mandated the Smithsonian Bureau of Ethnology to study Native Hawaiians and Native Americans, they acknowledged that it was their role to work with the Native Hawaiian people to rescue the culture and make sure the culture was perpetuated. When they established the Department of Hawaiian, at that time it was Hawaiian Homelands Commission, they acknowledged that they had a trust relationship with Native Hawaiians. When they passed the Kalapana Extension Act to include Kalapana in the Hawaii Volcanoes Act, they acknowledged that Native Hawaiians would have a right to homestead in that park and would have a right to continue to fish and gather in that park. The policy of the Congress was consistently to recognize Native Hawaiians as having self-governance and being a unique, distinct people like Native Americans, while they treated the territory as a whole, the Hawaii Nation, as this multi-ethnic territory. So I would like you folks to consider that Native Hawaiians do have a right of self-governance that has been recognized by Congress, that will again be recognized more formally, and that I hope that as you build your nations, your independent nations, you envision that independent nation, that you also recognize that within that nation, Native Hawaiians, who will be a minority, also have a right of self-governance that will continue past the United States into that new independent nation. Native Hawaiians will continue to have a right of self-governance that I hope you will recognize. So finally, I just want to say we have this idea from, I think it's Auntie Harriet and me, but Walter might correct me, that when the Ohana gathered on Molokai to consider whether or not to sign a consent decree with the US Navy and begin a process of joint governance of the island, access to the island from 1980 to 1990. The kupuna said, everyone come and share your mana'o. And the idea was, ho'ili ka mana'o. Each of us have, maybe it should be ho'o pohaku ka mana'o, but ho'ili ka mana'o. We all have our mana'o to share. Let's all bring it together to build one nation, one ahu. And build it in stages perhaps, or else continue on our separate paths. But I did want, so my time is up, but I did want to acknowledge Uncle Leslie Kuloloyo as our kupuna, and he's also the head of the Ahamoku, and I didn't know if he might want to just add anything, or mana'o, but I don't, is he still here? Oh, Uncle Les, mahalo.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm not going to talk about definitions or where we're going next, but I just want to talk about my calling with Kahoolawe before the occupation. My tutu ma was over there, yours and mine, using the aina for 2,000 years, period. I'm not going to talk about the definitions of sovereignty and ensnarement, but I'm going to use the fisherman talk. Hey, 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 when I see my ballfish moving. Yeah? The ballfish, the pupilo. Yeah? The manini, when they move, when they circle, when they run straight. Hey, 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 and hey means to ensnare. Ensnare the knowledge. Ensnare the gill in the upena. Yeah? Yeah, that's what we're doing, ensnaring our people. We are the fish of the Pacific. What pissed me off after Kahoolawe is when they molest Honolulu Harbor with the molasses. And not one of the organizations will make a move. And Pua Kupuna, all the fish, the hei, the loli, the vana, everything's coming up. Maki, the Kahoolawe, Endangered Species Act, 0. Save the whale, 0. God, funny. So what I'm saying is I'm going to jump what the spirit of the Ohana was. and my spirit today. And now, this is the spirit I like. You know what I like when I seen Brother Hayden? Where you stay? You. When Hayden, all you folks come on this Kahoolawe, and we all see the early days. Thank you guys, but I like this. Kaleko, my guy. My guy, you know what I mean? You gotta go, hit for the target, aim. You know, Okupuna, they know how to aim. They're all going fast, but we know how to aim. We know how to aim. Makes sense? We get you to aim. This is the aim. Then at the on class, could you teach my class? What? Oh, no talk bad now. Oh my God. You know, I go, hey, and snare the knowledge of Okupuna. Hey, out. Yeah, tango all the knowledge. That's what we're doing. Most of the hell, but the hell with the PhD can talk. And then so, hey, the other word I'm using is como. Hey, I want you to use como, fish meta como. Como means like this, como. Fungi, algae. Hey, we know political science. Hey, go ahead, como. 2 against 1, 3 against 1. Boy, hey. How many guys? 2, 3 against 1. No, it's not fair. Away. Who you, father? Oh, como. Hey, I talking bad? Okay. Hey. Como. Now I'm going, muli. When Kani and Kahoolawe, muli together. My guy. Kani, muli. That's what we do. We say muli with each other. Now we can talk fish talk. I'm making sense. It was like I talk hey. You like I suck your nipples on your head. No, you know what I mean, huh? We talk fish talk. Talk. How many of you eat okala? The one looking, the okala, you don't know okala, the okole. So I'm going like this. I eat. How many of you folks eat lole? What? Kawaii, lole. The lole pua, I eat. The lole kai, I eat. The lole coco, I eat. Why? They're the floor cleaners of the earth. No need go science school and look the koi, cleaning up the floor. Kata, opala, look inside the stomach, and that's your biological studies. Naikai. So Deviana, I'm not going to talk where the Ohana going, but that island is ours. Aye. And Molokini too. And Honolulu Harbor too. And Pearl Harbor. Maikai. And Haleakala. Maikai. And Kahoolawe Harbor. Maikai. And Long Straws. Maikai. Hey, Oha can buy this building, I own this building. Maikai. Viviana, thank you. But that's the spirit. Guess what? Before I close, when I joined the army, I go, do you solemnly swear to be United States Army? I mean, yes, sir. What's your name? Kuyo. We went inside just before statehood, and then we came out after 5th All Hawaii Company. Before now. So when I came out, I look at my discharge paper. You know what they gonna tell me? Not Kauinoa, not Native Hawaiian, not full-blooded 50%. You know what they got all of us local boys? And this is the catch-22. I'm registered as a Caucasian. You folks know that. No lie, man. On the army record, Caucasian, you know what? They never know how to put the black from the white separate. Yeah. And us local boys was in Georgia, down as Caucasian. You think I hurt? Come this guy meeting, fighting for identity. Come on, man. I hurt it. What signature I'm gonna put my signature? Caucasian, native. We all went hurt, and you know what they thought? Boy, in the mask line. Get over there, boy. So I know that game. Hey, boy, you cannot cheat shit here, boy. It's the white man. I've been in Georgia. My guy.
I just want to keep the humor and plan as generations for generations. And thank you for letting me bring my little mo'opuna. Aloha. Mahalo Deviana, mahalo Koles. Our next speaker is Walter Riddy. Walter? Oh. Next, I'll look this up.
Hello, my name is Walter Riddy from Molokai, and I've been coming to these sessions trying to figure out what is going on. And some of you, this is the first time I've seen you guys at these sessions, so I know you don't know what's going on. I don't quite understand what is going on after all the time that I've spent. It's very confusing. That's what's going on, and we need to understand as much as we can. So I'm going to try and give you my mana'o of what I see going on here. We all understand that OHA has been part of the effort for a nation within a nation, and they spent lots of money, lots of time, lots of energy, and the state has joined in the fight because they failed at the federal level. So, okay, we've got Kahoolawe going on, and it's the same process. So, in the meantime, people who are talking about independence, they're people, they were called dreamers, unrealistic, pushed to the side, not given any money, not given any credence to the whole thing. So time goes by, OHA is not successful after spending all of that money. So the Kaka bill dies, Senator Inouye dies, Kaka retires. So now there's a big void going on. So OHA decides that they're going to give voice to the independents. So the process was make an announcement and invite all of the independents to come inside. So we came inside and I saw what was going on. And while we were here, OHA was still in Washington, D.C., talking to not the Congress or anything like that, to a law, but to the Department of the Interior. So there's other ways to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. They couldn't pass the Kaka bill. So that is still going on, right? You saw this morning's paper, what was it, yesterday's paper. So people trying to figure out whether or not OHA and Kahoolawe is still attached or not attached. And everybody's still confused about the answer to that because the words say they're not attached. But the actions speak louder than words. So people are getting confused. You say one thing, but something else is being done by the same guys that you've been funding all this time, and they become really, really confusing out there. So, the thing that I support the most, that I'm concerned about the most, is the timetable. Who came up with the timetable and why? And we presented to the board that people feel there's not enough time for us to put the team together that's necessary to defeat the United States of America. We don't have enough time to do it. There was no response back as to why a year is so important to do all of this. So we're left to guess. I'm just guessing right now. So my most educated guess is that we have people that are in Washington, D.C., at the Department of Interior, several people. We got lobbyists being paid by, I don't know who, whether it's OHA or Kahoolawe. We got lobbyists over there. I don't know what connection the Dana sisters will have over there, but there's some connection because they're very well connected to Washington, D.C. So there must be some kind of connection. And then we have OHA that's connected over there because they got lobbyists over there. So right now, we're trying to figure out how can recognition be done without Congress, just through the Department of Interior. That's why everybody is still over there. How can the Department of Interior recognize the Hawaiian nation? So, in order for that to really go through, we need the Hawaiian people to say yes when the Department of Interior says, we recognize you guys. So the timing has to be right for the Department of Interior to make their move and for the Hawaiians to accept it in order to consummate the deal. So that's what looks like is going on. I'm trying to get somebody from the OHA trustees to tell us why, if not what I'm saying, then why the rush? Why the rush? Because we made our case that we don't have our team ready. We don't even have the elite trust at this table joining us. We don't have our people. That's the problem. That's the huge problem we have. The number one problem that faces what we're trying to do, that you're having problems with, is people participating, the reinstatement government is having problems because they don't have enough people. They started off with 5,000, I'm sure they don't have 5,000 now, because when we have our meetings at Molokai, we used to fill the room packed with Hawaiians. Now it's packed with non-Hawaiians. So we're having problems getting our people, because I don't know if they're sick and tired of all this, and somehow they're just not wanting to participate in any of this. The number one problem we have is we do not have our people. And that's why OHA makes negotiations that end up, I don't know if they're ever going to get Kahoolawe going, because they didn't have the people to negotiate. They negotiated from a position of weakness, but they don't have the people back. If we make the same mistake as a group and not go out and spend the time and energy in order to get our people, we're going to be in the same box. We're going to be begging. We're not going to be negotiating. We're going to be begging. So I'm here to say that we have to, as a group, the first thing we need to do in order to figure out what is going on. I don't know if OHA is facilitating. I don't know. I don't know what that means, facilitating. You know, we come here, is it our agenda? Whose agenda are we following? So, is that what facilitating means? As far as I'm concerned, I can only take that so long. In the beginning, you can handle it because you got to start somewhere. But after a while, and we're at the point of being after a while, we got to be in control of this thing. If we're going to be, quote, independents, and following the agenda of the State Office of Foreign Affairs, the people are going to look at us and laugh, right? The same reason why we're not buying into Kahoolawe where the state sets everything up. They're doing the same thing here in this room. So what I would like to suggest is the first thing we need to do is demand that this timetable be eliminated. It has to be eliminated off the table. We got to make that clear. We should not be participating if that's not off the table. Because all we're doing is stalling time for the Department of Interior to join Kahoolawe's list, and we're done for. So I have the feeling that we're being used only because Oha's unwillingness to listen to us. They went to Kahoolawe, and they're the same thing. I saw it on the videos. People want the timetable to be extended to be educated. And there were some speeches today that hit right on the nose. Even Mana came over here and hit the same thing on the nose. So that, we shouldn't go anywhere without that timetable being off the table. That thing needs to be at least 3 years for us to do a proper job and put our team together. The second thing, of course, is Kahoolawe. I don't know how more ridiculous the situation. I just cannot understand how we can justify telling Hawaiians you cannot participate in your sign-on. When we got examples of how it was done in the past, where everybody could come and sign up. Henry's gang, a better example of how they did theirs, and the example that Oha is using doesn't even come close to allowing all people to participate. So those two things, if we can get over those two things, then I would feel better that we're not being led around by the nose, that we are actually in control of our own destiny, and not being led around by the Office of Foreign Affairs. I think they have good intentions, but now they need to show their colors, because it's not easy for all to change, right? They're pushing. And even though they're telling us come inside, they're still pushing. So, we gotta come to grips with that part. We cannot be allowed to be led around like this. And from the island of Molokai, I bring a message from the island of Molokai. We're not in support of the 1887 Constitution to be brought to the island of Molokai. We're not sure yet if we agree with any of the processes going on. What we know is that we have our own process of Molokai, and so far it's working well for us. It's called the Ahamoku process. It's a traditional process that goes back before contact, and it's working for us. It's a process that starts with each Ahupua'a, then into the Moku, and then all the Mokus get together. It's a bottom-up management process. It's not this go on aha and they all leaders on the top tell us what to do. This is a bottom-up Hawaiian traditional process that we're trying on Molokai. So we're not just saying we want this process, we're actually implementing this process on Molokai. So I just wanted to throw that out there into the mix so that we realize how complicated this whole situation really is, and why we need so much time to raise our nation. So right now, I see on a piece of paper to raise our beloved nation. The action is we're going to protect. It's not raising all the action of this nation within the nation. It's not because we want to raise a beloved nation. It's because we want to protect the resources that we have so far, and we want to get more monies to come down through the federal government so that they become richer. We need 3 trucks instead of 1 or 2 trucks. I'm not quite sure. But it's not about raising a beloved nation. It's about assets. It's about getting more assets from the federal government. The only problem is it's tied to this thing called tribes. And if you go out on the street of Molokai, nobody wants to be a tribe. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand that kind of language. So, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how we're going to be independent, become independent as a group. I don't know how we're going to do that, but we need to be detached from Oha. We need to be telling the trustees what we feel, and how we feel, and how we will treat it. What is the timetable, and who can participate. If not, we're all being used. That's just my opinion. I wanted to give the rest of my time to Andre, if he's here. He's calling the Department of Interior to check on us.
Risk called is Juliana.
So, no, what about the, your call to formally make a push so we can maybe as a group to ask for a...
Yes, those two items, time and more ways to participate. Maybe the office, all of you in this room that would like to get rid of the timetable and increase the time that to allow us, please raise your hands so we know. Or can you guys take a picture of this? Please,
The voice of the people!
The voice of the people says we need more time. And we need to decide among ourselves how much time and justify the time. So this is a message we're getting all the way from Kelka all the way to Oahu.
Boys, you're going to Boston.
Okay, Andre.
Yes.
All right.
That's right.
Oh, and how many of you, this is a really good vote. How many of you feel that we should have more than Kanai Oluvalo as a process for us to participate in this? So those two things are supported by the independents in this room. So Oha, please listen to the voice of the people.
That's right. They don't listen. I don't know what voice they're listening to.
How about abolishing the commissioners that are coming to
That's
a start. Get rid of those commissioners. We did it.
Okay, Andre. Good welcome.
Andre, get 30 seconds.
Hey, okay, I wasn't even ready for this one. One thing I have learned in nation building, sovereignty, you always gotta be ready. So, well, I guess what I want to speak about, to gather my thoughts is the unity of our people has to be paramount in self-determination, sovereignty, and nation building. If we're not a unified people, then and they move forward with this process without us, without many of our people who will be left behind. Can you just imagine, use your imagination on what it would look like post-governing entity. You're going to have Hawaiians suing, you're going to have Hawaiians rejecting, fighting. You know, I cannot help on an extreme level but think about this, the division and what happens down after that, decades later, civil war. I think of the Hutus and the Tutsis in Africa, killing one another. That scares me. And I'll tell you that Kanai Oluvalo has already made an admission in their public notice to all of us. If you do not sign up with the roll, you and your descendants, they use the word descendants, makes me angry, will not be recognized as Native Hawaiian or as part of the governing entity. Who has the right and the authority to disenroll descendants before they're even born? And that's the danger of a roll.
They did that in Alaska.
That's the danger of a roll. And I would say, if when we let's look at that terminology, roll. What is a roll? Where does it come from? So I want to say something regarding Michelle Kahuulawe's comment, and in connection to Kalikoa's comment, where Kalikoa said, you know, we want to educate, and Michelle countered that by saying we are an intelligent people, we're brilliant people. That's right, we are a brilliant people, we are an intelligent people. But that's not what we're talking about when we say education. When we say education, let's put this one to rest. We're talking about educated decisions informed on nation building. When we talk, what is the difference between sovereignty and inherent sovereignty? What is the relationship of inherent sovereignty to governing entity? We need to know that. That is not independence. It's not in control. Yeah? When you look at Senator Tinoi's writings over the years, he would say that Hawaiians have the right to their inherent sovereignty. Inherent sovereignty is rooted in tribal law, American Indian Act. Yeah? So already the language, the discourse is loaded. Yeah? When we talk about self-determination, what's the history of that word? How has it been used and constructed and redefined over the years? America has used that language, and in their framework they call it the right, the consent to be governed, the consent of indigenous people to be governed. Wards of the state. So we got to be clear on this. So when we say we need education, we're not saying that we're not intelligent. We're saying that we're not informed on the particularities of nation building. And I know that we're not, because I see Kanai Olovalu commissioners using the term occupation and inherent sovereignty in the same sentence in relationship to one another. And they are diametrically opposed to one another. So we're not informed as we should be. And our leadership is not. In fact, I would say a lot of our independence guys are informed, but apparently the leadership are not as informed. And I can guarantee you a lot of our Lahui struggling out in Makaha, Waimanalo, Kelkaha to survive are not as informed as they should be. And we have a responsibility to make sure that they are informed. So that's what we mean by education. Yeah. So this process, the timeline, must be pushed back. And for me, I'm kind of low about the very validity of this process when it comes out of state legislation. The state being part of the illegal occupier. And they're going to legislate our self-determination. I don't know. But that should be the most powerful reason to say we need more time. Mahalo to aloha.
Mahalo Walter, Mahalo Andre. Our last speaker for this afternoon is Sophie Kanahan.
Aloha.
You like hold them or you like sit down?
You know, I was actually going to talk about the nation of Hawaii and what we've done from 1993 to today. But I think I ought to get into the discussion that everybody was having. To me, sovereignty is going out home, proclaim, and just sit and do it. But you're looking at it, over 50 acres of something that we like really accomplish in the future. But it's all little nation. This is the current, this area right here is where everybody lives right now. And we took over this whole place. Right? We've taken out maybe 2,000 trees over 100 feet high. I bring this up because we talk like hell in here. Only get one guy get on land base. Only one guy. 20 years ago, where you guys was? When we had to go jail, we had to go through the whole thing. My family had to go jail with me. Sometimes they think, warriors in school, they never come back yet. So, this is our sovereignty to us. For 20 years we've been on this land. In the law we passed, we proclaimed, went through the same thing that Henry was talking about that they went through. A process. I shared our constitution and the signatures of our kupuna councils and the heads that was involved at the time. This is what came out of that. Still there. We had to make a slight turn and create a 501c3 to get the lease. We went on the land September 24th, 1993. We got our lease, but we went on the land early. It was actually before the law passed, the apology law. And basically had a 55-year lease agreement in principle with the LNR to acquire all this land. That was in 1993. After the law passed, then I resigned from the Sovereignty Advisory Commission after being appointed by then Governor Waihe'e. And I told him, you guys are illegal. I jumped off the board and we went up and we started clearing forests. This whole thing was actually all forest. It's all interest over here. Then we started cutting India, and the neighbors got all upset. So the LNR came, the Attorney General's office came, shut us down. Said, you cannot do that. I said, well, we get an agreement in principle, no need nothing. Now we're talking about state, pala, all that. And they never care. So it was just on pacification, pacifying me and all that. So I told him, you know what, bro, we're going to take land from you guys then. Why are you pissing me off? So right there, we went to Makapu. And as you enter, we're at the audience on the right-hand side. As you enter, we went straight up on a hill over there in Makapu Beach. Put up our tent, and we never left for 15 months. That's how you exercise this law. Now, only reason why I came back is because I feel and I see our office trying to change. I see some changes, okay, real serious, authentic changes going on around us. I've been trying to figure out how I can help with our experience and all of that, how we can bridge the gap between what happened with OHA, the Road Commission, for how many years since its inception. When OHA was created, I was part of anti-Frenchie's group too. And yeah, that's when John they had the Constitutional Convention. In 1980, I ran for OHA. That time, 1980, was a really, really unreal, unbelievable time. We never know nothing. All of us, we just was excited. Something happened to us way back when. We all went and we gathered. And that was one of the highlights of watching the birth of OHA, Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So I ran in 1980. I never get in, but I know Walter M, Pokah, they got in. And again, that was the beginning. Now, I got to tell you folks that although I agree strongly in time and all those things going on right now that we need, I know we need them. That's for the guys that no can wait. I mean, that don't want to go forward. Me, I still going to stay in this system, what they doing, because I got them. I ain't jumping. When I ain't jumping all the way. Not just put my feet in. How many of you folks over here got funded by OHA? Airplane, travel, any kind? Raise your hand. Because I know who you guys are if you never. You see what I mean? Well, we hate OHA. Don't need to be embarrassed about that. I never get anything for my travel or anything like that, but I went out to them. But now I like no, because I like get airline tickets too and I go travel. And I go out of islands educate. Because I know you guys got it. So why you keep picking on OHA? That pissed me off. And you know the brother, just to get on check, hey, go get him, go down there, go get him. They guys will give you the ticket, go over there. Hey, you go stay overnight, you get accommodation. Don't worry, they can make you go Kahoolawe and everything like that. How is that? What a two-faced, three-faced, what kind of face? That's what's going on. People getting money, they coming over here not for nationhood. They put their project on the table in the auspices of everything else going on. You guys really serious about getting the country back? We will occupy the Capitol. Supreme Court building. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. Hey, we get on army together, let's go. I'm anytime, me 24/7. See, different now, you know why? Loss of freedom come into play. When you gotta go jail. If you're young, you gotta watch out. Your wife might find another boyfriend, you're in jail. See that kind? That's real. You cannot come here and talk about sovereignty, independence, and you're not going to jail for that. Or you're not going to die for that. It's all village. What do you want of this kind? And like Viviana, we're waiting for go over to the new government because we get the same clause in there. And should a Hawaiian government come, all that can be transferred over.